Thank you. My computer says it's 6:58. The clock on the wall says it's 7:01.
Yeah, well,
So I'll call the meeting to order at 7:00. How's that? It's here for the public forum. May I have any additions to the agenda, please, if there are any? If not, may I have a
February
motion
3rd
to
minutes.
approve the agenda.
February 3rd minutes. No,
Motion to approve the agenda.
So
Thank you, Geraldine. Seconded by
I
Randy.
can.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? All right, carried. Public forum, nobody's here. Oh God, I've already done that. Jeez.
you
All right.
double checked.
What's that?
No, I think Cody. goes
No,
first.
no, I prefer to stand, many years of working with Greg Graves. The CVFD responded to 19 incidences, January 2023. It's a fairly busy month. Numbers down a little bit from last year for the same time period because we had a big storm last year in that time period, and I've added about 12 calls to that last year. So luckily we didn't have that this year. We had 12 members during the month of January complete a 40-hour emergency medical responders course, which is further training from our standard MFR education that we do. So we're pretty happy to have them dedicate that time to help keep our community safer. Our monthly training was firefighter CPR, which is basically we train to do CPR on a downed firefighter. So it involves kind of removal from where they are, how to get all their PPE off quickly, which is their SCBA, their breathing pack, their bunker gear, and all the time doing compressions. And new tanker orientation and driver training, and the cascade system operation, which is how we fill our breathing packs on scene. So it was a busy practice. We took the delivery of our new tanker, which had its first big working event yesterday and worked splendidly. And we plan to have a public event for the tanker once the weather is a little bit nicer, so we'll everybody tune for that. And just wanted to say thanks to Jeff. A fair bit of work went into the budget on our end, and Jeff was more than willing to come help and educate us and work with us during that process. So thank you, Jeff. That's much appreciated by the membership. And with that, I thank you all, and I'll sit down and be quiet. Unless you have questions, and then I'll be louder.
No questions for the chief?
I have a question I forgot to ask this morning, but I want to know anyway. When you go to that fire yesterday, are you taking water with you? When you go in the tanker?
Yes, all our trucks sit in the station full of water ready to receive.
So the tankers,
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, 2,500 gallons on the tanker,
okay.
1,500 on the pumper tanker, and 500 on the.
So as soon as you come back empty, fill them up.
We don't come back empty. We,
Oh, you all.
yeah, we set a fill site up there and then fill, and then
Oh,
we were hauling salt water yesterday, so then we had to go down to Cancel, put it right on our hydrants and go down.
okay.
But you have to put something in that water in order to keep, even fresh water sitting there for who knows how long. Is there something you have to put in the water to keep like rust from happening and that sort
No,
of
salt
stuff?
water, I mean, we have anodes in the pumps, which is the same as you'd have on a boat. And really salt water, and we have, all our pumps have all stainless,
Okay, so it's all stainless.
yeah, and the tanks are poly tanks, so really it does it good because it'll clean out the algae that grows in the fresh water. But
Hmm.
the big thing is the flush that we do usually at the mill, because they have a pressurized system, which just makes it a little bit easier. But it takes a fair amount of time. There was, I think 11 trucks or 12 trucks there yesterday that would have had salt water, either hauling it or pumping it, so.
And they all flushed out at the mill.
I believe most of them did, yeah, some of them might have went to their home jurisdiction,
Hmm.
as far as I know, they all went there.
So they have an adequate supply of water, fresh
The
water.
mill, yeah, they have a lake and a huge pump system.
Yeah, they need
And the
it for the
towers.
process.
Great. Thank you very much, Chief.
Thanks, Code.
Moving on to the review and approval of the minutes of Wednesday, January the 11th, 2023. Any corrections, errors, or omissions?
You don't need to say something if you don't want to.
Well, I just was gonna hang on until the budget review,
Oh,
so
okay.
if there, just in case there was questions, I'd like.
That may be.
I just didn't want you to feel obliged.
Yeah, well, thank you.
Hearing nothing, then may I please have a motion to approve the regular meeting minutes of January the 11th?
So move.
Thank you, Randy. Second.
Second.
Thank you, Geraldine. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you. And the special meeting minutes of January 19th, 2023. On page 8, and I will try and catch up here. Not much. It was a meeting on the intermunicipal fire services agreement. So may I have a motion, please, to approve those minutes, such as they are. So moved. Thank you, Carol.
And
Second.
second.
Thank you, Randy. In favor?
Aye.
Carried. Village stationery is the next item on the agenda. We have the information that's been provided. Thank you, Geraldine, for making that suggestion. I sent a note along to all of you with another possibility. And that would be to not only use the stationery as a softer way to express condolences or congratulations, but also to use it as a promotional material for the village. And so I picked up these cards.
These are gems.
Yes. At the pharmacy. Take one and pass it on, please.
I'm sure Jim would.
Each one is
do it at a
purple.
much better price.
Nice gem.
Yeah. I've seen,
Yeah.
well, you can take another look.
Well,
I
there's
think it's a
one.
lovely idea. My only concern is that it doesn't have our logo on it, but I mean, it's still local and it's attractive. And apart from that, I'd be perfectly happy doing that.
Do we have a nice stamp or anything that says village?
Do we have a stamp, Maxine, for the logo? Yeah.
Or just a good, doesn't
No,
say
but we
village?
could probably print something on the label. Get it bigger,
Or just
bigger
as they
label.
do at the Kiwi Cafe, do a stamp.
Yeah, I'm sure we can get a cent name.
Just this Village of Chester.
And London River Stamp can do them pretty
Yeah.
inexpensively.
So this is not for everyday correspondence, am I
No, this is for
correct? These are for
special,
special
yeah.
sorts of.
Right. And also as a promotional item for the village.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but if you're only gonna send it to the people.
No, we're not gonna send this or give. We would be giving it to the people that we would normally give the
The
blue
bags,
bags to.
yeah.
Yeah, people who come into the office. The question would be to determine what, in your opinion, would represent the village to you. Is it the architecture? Is it the facilities such as the golf course? Is it the green area? Is it the firefighters memorial?
Well, if we were going to ask Jim if we could purchase them from him at a reduced price, we could just get a selection. But it never occurred to me that we'd be giving them out at the door. I was thinking of them as something, you give condolences to somebody who family member had passed away, or somebody who's in hospital, or somebody who had a baby, to be more cheerful, rather than something that we would give away.
But as we have been discussing, what are we going to do for promotional items? The preliminary cost of this is significantly less than what we have been looking at and fits the bill, in my opinion.
And sports.
And supports a local
Mm.
artist, merchant, if you will.
Booster, everything.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I
Um,
just, it never occurred to me about that. That's all.
Well, another option of what you're trying to do is give an introduction to the village. Might be to make it like a rack card that you could put, for instance, at the station where we have the largest percent of visitors coming through, somewhere between 4,000 and 6,000
Well, my,
each year.
my
So you
concern
could
is,
pass
hang
it,
on a second.
you could pass that out, and that
Yes.
rack card contain whatever you want to put on the back. The Village Commission of Chester welcomes you, whatever, and I mean, they're not all that expensive.
Mhm.
They used to give those blue bags, do you see
Yeah.
that? So then we had some discussions about whether we get canvas bags and all that, and we didn't want to compete with.
But I mean, how do you determine who's new?
well,
Just by
also,
asking?
also Jimmy sells those. Do we want to be giving them away?
Well, this is something that needs to be discussed. with Jim.
I mean, you might ask him to put in a group of
I would-
scenes
I would-
on your rack card.
I would think that each of us would figure out in our own minds, what is it that is attractive to you about the village? Is it the architecture? Is it scenes of sailboats? And make a selection, a single selection for yourself that you would like to see represented on the cards. And we'll go back to the drawing board if this is an option and how we would distribute them. Would it be at the train station?
And keep them here too. I mean, you can do it either way, but it's small. People who travel don't have room for big things.
Exactly, and this is easily packable, or they can write a note, as they used to do in the early 1900s, on a postcard.
Yeah. When they
And
sell
send it to their
those
friends.
Expensive.
Maxine, how many bags would you go through in the run of a year?
The last couple of years, I couldn't tell you because of COVID.
Right.
Before then, we were having like a lot of people. That's why when Dennis ordered me, ordered 500 bags and then COVID hit.
Right. So do we have a lot of those left?
Only about 30. So 500 bags lasted a little over 3 summers. But again, that was
It was COVID.
with COVID.
The advantage of a card is that the person gets it, they're happy. I send it to Randy and he's like, oh, and he's happy. So you have got, Nancy's not wrong.
Double your money.
And you supported Jim
Yes,
and it's as local as
and
can be.
maybe the person that you sent it to said, oh my God, I've got to go to
I gotta
Chester
see that
next summer.
fire memorial.
Yeah,
Well, some people might.
Well,
I love cards. I love sending cards.
If you've got 30 bags, and then thoughts just gone, plump.
welcome to that.
Why don't you offer them to people who are moving into the village? Because we have a lot of new people who have bought and are here now that weren't before. So if you could, and I'm sure the planning department has some
Idea.
handle on that. So if you knew that so-and-so over here has just bought a house and is moving in, then you give them their goodie bag, their
empty goodie bag.
your $30, your 30, one of your 30 that you have left with either the card or whatever, or
Sort of
something.
like
in it.
welcome wagon.
Yes, like a welcome wagon and say, you know, this is what we do somewhere in there, so you can toot your own.
You can even fill it
Information
with
as well.
flyers, so
Yeah,
farmers market, just, you know, that kind of.
yeah, well, I mean, that would be sensible
Did Jim,
too.
give us an actual quote on?
You bought these full parts, did you?
I did.
So, and he's not very happy with the pharmacy because they've stashed him
Way in the
way
back.
in the back.
Yeah,
So
Kim used to
I
give
had
them
to
much
ask-
better,
Yeah.
and we did too
So
years
I'm
ago.
sure, I think, what do they sell, $5.99 or something? I suspect he has boxes and would, even for,
I'm sure he'd give us
$3,
a
you
good-
know, yeah.
But I mean, you get a chance to do that. I think one of the things that people talk about here are white picket fences and roses. And there were a series of cards that did that.
Oh,
Boats. And boats.
Oh, yeah, you gotta have bones, yeah.
Well, shall we defer any decision until the next meeting? And until such time as we can get a firm price from Jim? Um,
how many would we wanna buy? It'll be easier if we ask him for like 100 or something.
well, if they were to be given away at the old Visitor Information Center, the train station, I would say, yes, we would need 500. If it is just for people coming by the village office and for letters, notes of condolence or congratulations, I would say 250 would be all we need. So,
You can ask him for a price. for
Yeah,
250
the other
and that-
quotes seem to be 500 being the lowest possible amount you can get for the other people.
but I can imagine that getting 500 photos to mount on 500 cards
Hmm.
with Jim's signature 500 times and Chester, and then the stamp on the back, gotta be more, yeah. But at any rate, let's,
Perhaps investigate the.
we'll investigate and maybe get a firm price.
Maybe a reduced size for the card.
Now, this is a good
Sure,
size.
that-
It's enough to write an appropriate
5 by
note
7,
or add to it. So,
Inside here, does this flip open and there's
yes,
a writing area inside?
Yes.
and
full
blank
size.
on the inside.
um.
Do you wanna talk to Jim?
Sure, I'd love to. I will talk with Jim, get a firmer price. Bring that back to you at the next meeting for a decision. And it's possible that he may only really want to do 200 or 300.
Yeah.
And we'll investigate to see if there's any copyright problems with, or not copyright, but
Yeah, if he has any
Issues.
concerns about,
with other
Yeah.
merchants selling the same price or the same product. Okay, so we'll defer that.
Cheaper.
and I don't know where he gets his card stock, but potentially, maybe you could print cards with the village logo on the back before he puts the picture on them, right?
All right,
Take the blank card stock. He may be open to that, I'm not sure.
okay,
But, if it had a little promotion on the back, Jim Barcos is, and you can buy his cards at, and then the village of Chester is, and these two, blah, blah,
and
blah.
here's one that we're giving to you.
Yeah,
Thank
this is
you.
a sample that you get for free.
So what, do we have to move to defer it or anything, or what?
Good question.
I know we defer it till the next meeting.
Thank you, Carol.
I
Are you
want to-
seconding, Gerald?
Yeah, she
I
did.
did.
Thank you. All in favor of
Aye.
deference at the deferral?
We always.
We'll
defer.
table it, let's
Yeah.
table it.
Is that a decision that we will not be pursuing bags or not yet?
No,
No.
we're indecisive at the
Okay.
moment, yeah.
Just one of the suppliers has followed up to say,
Oh,
are you still interested? And I just put her off, said no decision's been taken yet. So I'll leave that status quo for the time being.
I would say it is a decision to defer bags or to not pursue bags, but,
Okay.
Well, all
I'm
we did
just-
before was defer it or table it or something.
Yeah. okay.
So we have to eventually bring it off the table. and
All
make
right,
it-
Maxine, have you got that? I followed the bouncing ball? Good, thank you. Now, where are we? We're on correspondence, Jeff.
Clerk Treasurer.
There isn't any correspondence,
All right,
other than the stuff I've reported in the clerk treasurer's report.
all right. Would you like to
Yeah, so.
Carry on.
Again, the activity report and the financial report in your package. I'm not going to read you all of the updates because I'm sure you've had a chance to look through them, but just a few highlights. So on page 10 of the activity report, we did get the electrical fixed on Water Street. The day they fixed it, there was one bulb burned out of the, I think there's 8 posts, and within a week, there were 3 bulbs burned out. So they are headed back down to check. It may just be that because the power was off for more than a year, those bulbs had issues when the power came back on, but they're going to check and make sure that it's not anything more than just bulbs and get back to me. I didn't drive by tonight. I meant to on my way in and I forgot. So I don't know if they got that done last week or not. That was their plan, but I will check on my way home. The line under that, we applied for the summer hiring grant from the federal government. We generally use that to hire lifeguards at the pool. So we did apply for a senior lifeguard and a junior lifeguard. Only in that the senior is the more experienced person. And we thought this year we might bring the senior lifeguard on a little bit early in the summer of 2023 because we need some policy work done for down at the pool. So we don't have a written safety policy. We don't have a written testing policy. We need some forms designed to report accidents, some of that kind of stuff. And there was also a conversation about if the weather was appropriate, could we open in June during the daytime or even potentially in the evenings at the end of June rather than waiting for the 1st of July when school closes. There may be adults that want to swim if the weather's good enough, or even kids in the early evening if we're able in June. So it's in there as an option. If they approve it, we don't have to hire it, but if they approve it. And then last year, we weren't able to find enough lifeguards, but we were approved for 2 positions. And we said, oh gosh, we could use the extra position in the office. And they said, well, because you didn't apply for an office position, you're not allowed to use the money for that. Lifeguards are nothing. So this year we also applied for a policy assistant. We called it in the office. So if it happens similar to last year, I doubt if they're going to approve all 3, but they may approve 2 of the 3.
Bases are
something like
covered.
that. So we're trying to cover bases.
Have we had any more contact with the young lady who was interested because she was going to be living down here this
Mhm.
summer?
So I
Have we
think,
heard anything more from her?
yeah, I haven't heard directly from her, but I heard from her family who said she's certainly continues to be interested in working at the pool here this summer. Last year she worked in New Brunswick.
She's senior?
She's somewhere in between. So she could be senior.
Yeah.
She's in her first year university and she's been a lifeguard for a couple of years. So we've got 4 potentials, 3 of whom worked for us last year. So one guy's been with us for a number of summers, is still in university, apparently has said for a couple of years, I'd like to do something other than lifeguarding in the summer, but then comes back anyway. This young woman who worked for us for a week at the end of the summer last year and indicated she'd like to come back. A young guy from Edmonton whose family owns a cottage at Bayswater who has already written to us and said, I got my lifeguard certificate over the winter. I'm super excited to come back to the pool. And a young guy, I think he's from Ontario, whose family is building a house here in Chester, and he's moving here in June, who's already written to us and said he's interested.
Maybe he's
So-
living
Is that
across the
enough to
street.
staff
We-
the pool?
I'm told we usually hire 3 in a year in which we can get 3, and that's 4 potentials. So.
Well, that's good. So we're still in touch with.
Feel,
these
oh, yes,
folks. Yeah.
yes, we're staying in touch and sending little texts and,
That'll be a nice sort of bonus if they can get some June work,
Mhm.
right? If you can nab them
Yes.
before Mahone Bay or somebody
Right.
else.
yeah. The rest of the stuff on that page is just pretty straightforward. The second page, page 11, we're working with the chief and one of the firefighters from the truck committee on the disposal of the old truck. So I've been in touch with the lawyer around what's the right wording to use and how do we make sure that we've got the maximum flexibility over which offer you might be able to accept. So I've got a first draft of the package done for the department to run their eyes over, and then I'll run it by our lawyer who's on standby to look at it. So that hopefully will be ready in the next couple of days. We did circulate the statement of work for a recruiting company, recruiting services to 4 companies and got bids back. And we're still in the process, as you know, of assessing those 4 bids and making a decision about which, if any of them, might be the firm that you'd be interested in working with. So there's a bit more work to be done there. And I'm working with MODC to find a draft contract that we could use for the eventual company if we did go forward and hire one of them. So there's a bit more work to do on that. And then the last one I would highlight is the second from the end, and I think I've sent you all an email just to let you know that there was a woman who fell and was fairly seriously injured on a sidewalk in Chester, who has hired a law firm and put notice to the village that they intend to sue us. Our insurance company, I spoke to both our lawyer and our insurance broker and our insurance company and the insurance adjuster. And the advice is to designate the adjuster to lead the conversation with the lawyer. So the woman has designated the lawyer as her spokesperson. We've designated the adjuster as our spokesperson, and they're having conversations. We don't believe that we have any fault. So we don't own the sidewalk, we don't plow the sidewalk, we don't have a contract to look after the sidewalk. And the Municipal Government Act does not require us to clear snow inside the village.
Well, that's my question. How come we're involved in this at all?
Because anybody can sue anybody for anything.
He's a village resident, do we know?
I don't believe so.
Is she an American?
I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah,
Her language in the email that she originally sent us was, I was visiting the village with a friend when I fell. So I don't believe she's a resident. So we're just waiting for, we're back. Our insurance company seems to be of the opinion that once the law firm realizes that we're not the right entity, it'll probably go away, but we have to work our way through the
But it's
process.
costing us money.
It is costing us money.
Can I interrupt just while I'm thinking about this? There is a center at the Baptist Church now that can take people in, an emergency
A warming center?
warming center. That's now,
You have a generator now?
we now have a generator, so it's set up and ready to go. Just so if anybody is asking, that's where it is.
Was it
Yeah, but
operational last weekend?
Yes, was.
When
we really
needed
No, we had nobody.
Maybe nobody knew about it.
Well, that may be too, because I only learned that the generator was in just recently, so it's we really haven't had time, there's no church.
People didn't have internet. I shared it when Donna
Yeah.
told me to share, it, but I think it was almost over.
But anyway, it's
That's great.
in and set up and ready, there are names on,
Baptist churches?
yeah, names on the door, including mine, for contacts. So that's that one, and I see it says wreaths are down, and I'm gonna do this whether this is appropriate or not. Have you thought of, normally when the wreaths come down, the next thing that goes up are flowers. And I think that it's too early for flowers.
They've already been ordered.
I don't care, but I think you should be thinking about replacing the flowers with something that is more long-term lasting, that you don't have to change, that you don't have to water, that you don't have to put up and take down.
Maybe we can discuss this when we
So-
get to the budget.
Well, that.
They've already been ordered for this summer. They have to be ordered by fall.
Yeah, but I mean, it seems to me that if we're gonna pay that much money, we'd be better off to think of something that would be applicable to the village, whether it's a sailboat or it's a seagull or whatever, that you put on the post and it stays there year round. You don't take it up, you don't take it down, you don't have people,
You don't water it.
yeah,
We did have a wee chat about banners and stuff, didn't we,
Yes, we
last
did,
year,
yeah.
because we looked at.
I
Bible
don't
Hills
think
and-
banners work well.
Oh, we know, and we
We
collected
did banners
ideas.
one time too, as a Heritage Society.
I'm sorry?
We did banners at one point too,
Mhm.
the Heritage Society, and if you'd like to have banners like those, we can certainly give you the one that we used, which was the turncoat.
Oh, I remember.
Thanks, Carol.
So yeah,
Okay.
why don't we come back to that with the finance
Yeah.
discussion? With the budget discussion, sorry,
Yeah.
because it is in there. So yeah, the page 12, the final, so that's it for the activity report. Now, like I said, I'll leave you to read the other things. And then the finance report, we reconciled the December bank statement and it all cleared. The balance at the end of December was 885, and that's because we transferred money from the investment account into the bank to pay for the fire truck, and it hadn't yet come out by the end of December. But you'll see in the third line there that since December, the expenses of 745, and that reflects the fact that we've been paid for the fire truck. So that's why it's unusually high in that month. As of February 1st, we still had 154,000. As of this afternoon, we had 153,000 in the bank account. And we're waiting for the fourth quarter payment from the municipality, which usually comes early February.
The check is in the mail.
Yeah, we should have it just about any time, which is good because that the last thing to come out of there will be the truck reserve, the apparatus reserve is yet to come out. And it's $150,000 is what's in the budget. And then any money that's left at the end of the year, either from the fire department or the village, should any be unspent next year, when we know what the final tallies are, that gets put into the reserves as well. So it gets booked into the reserves next year.
Thanks, Jeff.
The election's pretty straightforward, Jeff. Looks perfectly fine to me.
Okay.
The others feel the same, but
Yeah.
pretty straightforward. It's all there in black and
Oh,
white.
I'm sorry, I am remiss in not welcoming our new commissioner to the table.
That's our first official meeting.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, that's funny.
So yeah, so the Municipal Election Act requires that we table the report that you see, which is page 13, which just says how many people turned out. So as you know, 90 turned out, which I think exceeded probably what I expected. I
Yeah,
thought,
you had 50 chairs.
Yeah, you put 50 down here, yeah.
yeah. So it's a little scrambling to get us booked up. People seemed relatively happy. You see the expenses there on 14. They should be dated the 4th of January, not 4th of June. That was just a typo. But part of the reason you'll recall that we did the special meeting rather than the full election with 2 days was cost. So you see, Mac, the cost there for staff of around $100, a little less. Had we run a regular election, we would have had to pay those 3 people to be there full day for the advanced poll and a full day for the regular poll, plus all of the other costs associated with it. So in essence, you really did save yourself a reasonable amount of money by doing it the way you did.
And even then, it was an expensive proposition, in my opinion.
Well, relatively so.
And I would like to comment that Jeff did a fabulous job explaining that very complicated process to the people, and I think they really,
Most of them appreciate
they
it.
appreciate it, and it stopped any foolish questions or anything.
Yeah.
Every detail was laid out, so
Yeah.
congratulations.
3 cheers for Jeff.
Yes, that's what we need. Yeah, and then the last 2 pages, 15, 16, really, I wrote that mostly for the benefit of anybody who comes along another year and wants to do something similar and says, well, how did they do that 6 years ago? They did something in the file that says, this is what we did. So unless any of you had thoughts that you thought, oh, this part could have gone better, this other thing was horrible, I wish we had, I don't think we need to spend a lot of time on it.
Yeah. Not that
There's no motion to be made or anything like that.
Thank you very much, Jeff. Excellent reports. Moving on to committees, are there any committee reports?
Nothing on the
All right, then. Well. We're on. Item 9, the abuse prevention policy, page 17.
17. So yeah, as it says here, you will recall that we saw this item in December. Our insurance company is requiring all public entities, municipalities, villages, municipal bodies in the province, and probably nationally, but I know in the province, that you must come up with an abuse prevention policy or not have liability coverage for abuse into the future. So we did a draft that you folks looked at in December, and we updated it with some of the comments that you offered. We added a resource guide to the back, and part of the reason we did it that way is one of the comments we got was, if you embed all the phone numbers and links and references in the policy, every time you want to change a link, you have to get the policy reapproved. So do a resource guide to accompany it. It just makes it administratively simpler. And we did find an online training guide for harassment. I'm continuing to look for one more specific to child abuse prevention. I haven't found that yet, but I'm continuing to look for a training resource for that. It has been reviewed not just by our broker, but by our insurance company. So Intact Public Entity, who has signed off on it, said it meets all of their requirements, checks all of the boxes. And it's been reviewed by the village lawyer, who also felt it was appropriate and didn't raise any concerns. So I'm suggesting that we approve the policy as tabled and send a copy along to the insurance company and begin to implement it. So we would get crossing guards, lifeguards, people that clean the washer, those kinds of folks. We get them a copy, get them to sign off if they've read it, make sure that we're renewing our abuse registry checks at the right period of time, all the things that are in the policy.
Are we considered staff? I see a lot of mention in the policy about staff having to renew their use or their, are we considered staff?
No.
Do we have to do that?
I use these, so I don't have to keep.
Oh,
I brought one in the car, I never brought it.
Yeah, I noticed a lot of that, and then there's the word commissioner was mentioned a few times within that.
Well, but we
The
were
body.
receiving complaints. and
Yeah,
it was
yeah,
Being
yeah.
complained against. So that's, I noticed in the other question I had, what if someone comes to us, but an external person, they say, say they were at the pool and some stranger walked up to them and pulled down his zip.
I think that's
Waved
covered.
things
isn't it?
around. That's not covered in here, or did I miss it?
We didn't cover that specific thing, but a person would still have the ability to come and complain or register concern with one of the staff, and then you'd make a decision on, is that something you'd call the police for, or something you'd call social services for, versus, I mean, we're not gonna give a written warning to somebody standing outside of the fence, right? So the policy in terms of response would be somewhat different, but if a person brought forward a complaint, we would assist them to get the complaint registered in the right place.
So we would just help them.
We would just help them go through the process.
I think that's in here. So if someone came to us out, so I can't find
You
it
see,
right away.
I read it a couple of times and that was the one thing I didn't see. And then the other thing that I thought was vague was the commissioners. Because it seemed like we could receive complaints, but it didn't seem to me clear if we were, harsh to an employee to a point of abuse.
That's code of conduct more. Oh, yeah, I closed it right.
Yeah, I suppose in that sense, as an employer, you'd be subject to the personnel side of the policy of harassment, yes. But not to the abuse side of the policy in terms of, of being alone in a washroom with a child or that.
Just so long as we're pointed out.
Okay,
Do any of these have to be reviewed each year? These policies, I know, for instance, at the church, child abuse policy has to be
if there's no,
reviewed every year.
there's no requirement that happen, but it'd certainly be, if the commission wants to do that. The only one that has to be reviewed every year is the
Background.
travel policy, which you don't actually have one.
Well, I
So
mean, if you're not,
So the insurance company does not require regular.
this is the first time they've ever asked for it. Now, will they ask every year from now on? I don't know, but there's no indication in what they've sent us so far that they need to do that. Okay, I will amend it to make it a little more clear that the commissioners as an employer on the harassment side are subject to the policy.
Subject to that, I move that we approve it as to be amended.
Thank you, Geraldine.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Randy. All those in favor?
Aye.
Carried.
I think it's pretty comprehensive. I went over it about 3 or 4 times.
Everyone's gonna be stealing Jeff's policy, no?
Yeah, I
That's right.
know, I tell you.
Luckily, there's a good network of folks in these jobs, so we all have been
We
already
steal from each other.
sharing stuff around.
Well, these were things that you didn't have to do.
Yeah.
No,
well, I
now
know
you do.
that the Baptist church, for instance, has a child abuse policy. but like,
Yeah, Bonnie Lee has
That's
one, most agencies these days have sports organizations, as you know, are quickly getting them if they don't already have it,
Time.
so.
But yeah, I mean, anywhere where there's a vulnerable type of person that may come in contact, I think everybody's getting them now, all these policies. Insurance companies are demanding it,
Yeah,
and therefore.
yeah, it's about risk management, right?
Okay. Preliminary budget review.
So I didn't table the budget for approval, because there's still a few things that need to be clarified. We're moving forward in terms of the budget. So maybe given that the chief stayed for the budget discussion, maybe we could split this up and do the.
Fireside.
Yeah, I'll just say a few
We'll have
general,
a fireside chat.
I'll just say a few general things and then we can talk maybe about the fire services budget. So in the past, all of the money for the fire service would have run through the village's accounts. So MODC would have given us their money and we would have put everything through the village's budget process and all of the resources, all of the assets were ours. As you know, the new fire services agreement say we are going to co-manage, co-share that responsibility. So this year we've crafted the budget documents just slightly differently. So in the village budget, it shows the amount of money that would be going towards the fire service as a block sum. In the past, it would have incorporated the full fire department budget. This year, it just shows the amount of money that you bring in through the village fire rate as a pass-through going on to the fire services committee. But you've got the same amount of detail in the fire services budget that you've always had. It's just separated out. So if you look at page 37, for the first time, what we've done is we've shown revenue sources for the fire department. So as Cody said, he and I and Greg and a few other folks worked our way through the budget documents. So because all of this money in the past would have come to us first and then flowed through, this year it's going in a different thing. So it shows the village contribution on line 1, the MODC contribution on line 2, there's some training budget on line 3. So that is training that the department will apply to the Fire Services Association of Nova Scotia. They did that last year, but the training money came after the fact and the training happened after the budget was approved. But because it was a flow through, we didn't approve it that way. Cody and I had some discussion this year and said, look, let's be more clear about how much the total amount of training is and who funds it. So we showed it on both the revenue side and the cost side as a broken out subject so that you can see, in addition to the money the two partners put in for training, there are other people putting in money for training for our firefighters. And then we kept the fireboat separate because it is a totally separate group of taxpayers, totally separate budget. It's in a separate account. The whole works. Didn't change much.
I'm still a little unclear. The figure of 355,000 and 371,000, are they based on last year's
No,
assessment?
they're based on the estimates for the coming year.
Okay, but the rates aren't set.
We have not confirmed the rates as yet, correct?
Okay.
So if you look at that sheet that's on page 31,
Yeah.
it says draft rates assuming no change from the previous year. So if you look at the very bottom line, 23-24, the village assessment is 480 million. So the very bottom line on the far left, the village assessment. Geraldine, you're on the far right. Go to the far left. There you go.
I have trouble with one thing.
That's okay. So the village
My
assessment.
father used to say you're on the right.
Your other right here, or your other left. So you'll see the village assessment is 480 million, sorry.
Yeah.
If you don't change your current rate of 777, that would generate 373.
And that's general gov, right?
That's general gov.
Yeah.
In fire, 740 would generate 355, 670, which is the 355, 670
Is
on the
here.
top line of the fire budget. MODC, which is there for information, because that money, it may come to us early in the budget, but it really should go to the new fire services committee. Their assessment is 500 million. at 0.740 would generate 371. That's where the 371 on the second line of the revenue comes from.
And the 10,000.
So if some decision is made to change the fire rate up or down, those numbers in the revenue projection would change. Right, but this is just saying with the assessments that are estimated in last year's rate, here's what you would generate for revenue.
So the 355,670 projected for VOC fire,
Right.
would that still come to us and then flow through the
Correct.
committee?
For the VOC side, it would.
Yeah,
That's exactly right.
so we'd get the money from MODC.
Correct.
We would then give it for our half of the fire services. Maybe that's my understanding.
Right, well, we would, the agreement says we would put it in a jointly managed account. So it wouldn't go straight to the committee.
Oh,
Each side
yeah,
puts their
but
money
still.
into a joint account, but
It's-
yes,
For our purposes, it's gone as soon as it comes in.
once it's approved,
I'm
Yeah.
surprised it even comes in.
Yeah, I don't, this is where I'm sort of a little bit loose ends with this new way of looking at things.
Well, if
So
it
that's
went
why I'm asking.
logically, it would come to us and we would then in turn.
Flow it
put
right
the
through.
joint
That's the
bank
way I
account,
thought.
But it doesn't make any difference because it's all gonna end up in the same place.
and I guess technically we haven't structured a document that says here's what the flow of money is, but I mean, it is VOC revenue, so to me, you would
We
want,
still-
you would want to show it on
Yeah.
your books as
Yes.
coming in and going out.
Yes,
Right?
technically.
That's what I
I'm
think
asking.
would be
Yeah.
appropriate, but an auditor somewhere may tell us different. But that's what I think.
We know it's lost to us.
It's in essence what the municipality does with all 7 districts so
Right.
far.
Oh, okay, so
They flow it right through and then it goes to commission, village, or the fire.
oh, okay. So we sort of have our hands on it for a moment until it goes into the joint account. Then it's basically. how it's done.
Kind of like
You're-
my husband.
Your point of influence is in the next month.
Yeah, okay.
So if there's something in the budget for either the village or the fire department that you look at and think, why are we paying for that? During the budget discussion is your chance to say to the chief or to the department or to me or to yourselves, why is that in there and why does it cost that much? But then once the budget is approved, it goes through the normal budget management process, which in the new world will be the committee and for the village will be your new clerk treasurer.
Right.
Okay,
Okay.
I just wasn't 100% sure how the flow.
Yep,
through would-
But that's where those numbers come from, is the,
Kind of a rapids, you know,
yeah.
whitewater rafting.
It's the estimated assessments times the current rate, which is not yet confirmed as the rate you want to go with, to give you those numbers. So on the budget front, Cody, do you want me to do a walkthrough and you take questions?
Yeah.
Okay. So as we did with the last quarterly report, I've included a page of notes and numbered up the points. I mean, some of it's pretty straightforward. So section 1, we've made the assumption that the administration will continue to flow through the village with the overheads of half of Maxine, 25% of the clerk treasurer, and then, you know, their share of the audit. We, again, trying to simplify the fire department budget, rather than have a line for candidate pension and a line for employment insurance and a line for this and that. We just lumped it all in under salaries. So that salary budget is the same amount as it was last year, but we just didn't break out all the little subsets in it. We just put it in as a salary line. Bullet 1, $5,000, that is for the new committee and business that they have to do. So the agreement says they must hold a public meeting every year. They must have, they must meet regularly.
38.
Sorry, page 38,
Oh, I
bullet
see,
1 on
bullet
the
is
far right.
Numbers here? Oh, the last.
Yeah.
That's a bullet. isn't it?
So they may, in fact,
It's notes to the budget. really,
Yeah.
is what it is. Like, page
Page
42
42.
is notes.
Yeah. So they may in fact not need that $5,000, but we just thought, look, it's reasonable given that they've got activity to do. They've got some things that they are supposed to do under the agreement. They may want to take some training. So some of them have never worked around the fire service before. They may want to take a training program. They may need to buy a piece of technology, accounting software or something. So we put a notional amount in there, whether that'll get used or not. We'll know better at the end of the second year. Firefighting force is pretty much the same. Nothing has really gone up there except for the insurance amounts that went up based on this year's increases. Training stayed basically the same, and that's where you see the 35,000. It was 25,000 or 20,000 last year. Went up a little bit in training, but it's where the 10,000 came in and goes out again from the Fire Services Association of Nova Scotia, which last year the same thing happened. We just didn't show it in the budget the same way, right? This is trying to be a little bit more transparent. Bullet 2, medical supplies. So this is an increase in the cost of PPE for firefighters. So you've heard from Cody and Greg that they've stepped up their responses and they're doing more medical responses. So they need more things like boot covers and things to, you know, if you get blood on your soiled equipment, that kind of thing, they need more PPE. The cost of medical supplies for people that are hurt in accidents is actually provided by EHS. So they're able to send that in and get those supplies refreshed for free from the province. This is just the cost of PPE for the firefighters themselves. Tools and equipment, we took some of those subcategories. So you see before there was hoses and flashlights and a whole bunch of different things. Well, every year you need to replace some things, but it's hard to say at the beginning of the year, is this the year all of our flashlight batteries are going to go dead? Or is this the year we're going to break 6 saw blades? Or is this, so we clumped it together in tools and equipment category. But you see that it's a similar kind of cost level. And then vehicle fuel, we bumped it up really significantly this year. It was 6,000 last year. We bumped it to 9. They aren't going to spend 9 this year, so bumped it back down to 8, just to reflect what's likely to happen. Insurance bumped up based on the actual costs. So firefighting equipment is up a little bit, but not a huge amount, and most of that is on the insurance side. Page 39, PPE, same kind of thing. So you'll see all those zeros under gloves and extrication gloves and boots and wallet. We just moved those all up into a general PPE category. We did keep bunker gear separate because it's such a significant cost, right? It's more than just a generalized pair of gloves, or we, you know, ruined a pair of coveralls. It's a much more significant purchase. And it needs to be refreshed because it regularly expires. Bunker gear actually has an expiry date on it. Right?
Is the supply chain,
Safety stuff you have to wear inside?
Yeah, it's our suit.
is the supply chain opening up on getting that kind of stuff?
Getting a little better, still not where it used to be, but it is definitely.
So you feel you could keep yourselves going with what you can buy then?
Yeah, we don't.
So basically, everything except bunker gear is now one line. Is that-
More or less, yeah.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Communication, you'll see the first bullet there, the communications contract is down. We kept the number the same, the amount, it's down a little bit. And not to confuse you too much, but if you look down at the bottom category, building and general, where it says telephone and alarm, you'll see we're over on that one. We're still trying to work out when the last chief left and some bills started coming in that were paid by the department. We switched where some of the bills got charged, and we're going back to make sure that we're billing things in the right place. So between those two, it's $10,000, and we're pretty comfortable that's a good number. But should it be 6,000 in one and 4,000 in the other, we've got to go back and review some of those bills and just clean up that costing to make sure that we've got the right amount in the right budget. But we're pretty comfortable we've got the right amount overall. The rest of communications is pretty straightforward, other than some mobile radio upgrades. So you see Cody show up with 2 or 3 radios on a belt. Some of those radios are 20 years old, and you know they need new crystals and all of that. Well, for some of that stuff, it's cheaper and more efficient to buy a new piece of equipment than to try and upgrade an old piece of equipment that's got 20-year-old guts with a new
Crystal radio set?
It's a carryover from the day when there were crystal radios.
Back in the day, there was crystals in the radio. So they got-
Certain frequencies were
Yeah.
specific on the
Yeah.
crystal, so that you couldn't use other frequencies, you just had to use that.
I'm sure
one.
these days they are semiconductors or some other type of thing, but
Yeah,
it's like anything else. The term has stuck. Maintenance has stayed pretty much the same. You'll see from overall at the end of the page there from 48,000 down a little bit to 45. That's because the pump tests on the apparatuses are all caught up and we shouldn't need to do.
So are we still gonna budget the 2,500 for the pump test,
No.
even though we're not gonna use it?
No,
Oh, I'm sorry, that was 22, 23 months.
that's right. So 23, 24 far right, there's a zero there. That's why that category drops by almost $3,000 because they're caught up on pump testing.
Same with maintenance on the engine.
But 2 years from now, you need an apparatus pump test.
And we moved it all, we're gonna put it under the one line item, since it's pump maintenance. And, so, but it's gonna become a lot cheaper this year than other years.
Okay,
Because our contractor is no longer in business. He closed his doors just before Christmas, so we no longer have a contractor to come in and do our pump work, so that will be done by yours truly. So the cost will be significantly less. So. that's what we have there.
But yes, in some future year, that category could go back up,
mhm.
right? And
That's the same for the small engine maintenance, where it's gone down significantly by half. They just don't think they're gonna need that much maintenance?
So we based it on what we spent this year and last year. We were always kind of riding that number a little high because we were unsure.
Sure.
It's just kind of a program we started the last few years where we do full contractor maintenance on all small equipment. So it's been consistent, so we're kind of.
500 is enough then, you
Yeah,
feel? Okay.
exactly, yeah.
okay, if you jump down to building in general, you'll see a few numbers there. So number 7, janitorial. We discovered this year that, so we share the same cleaning person here at the village office and at fire hall. They do both sections. And we discovered that for some administrative mistake, that amount had been charged to the fire department for the last couple of years entirely. None of it was charged to the village. So this year we split it. So you see the 5,000, we're going to spend about 2,500 of that by the end of the year. And you'll see when we do the village piece that there's $2,500 charged to the village that never existed the last couple of years. So that is correcting an issue that we discovered when we did the budget.
Cody, what about the fire hall cleaning? I know that Martin for every year practically suggested that an outside company be contracted.
I think we're getting thanks are up with the price.
It's adequate.
Yeah, we've had a couple of little miscommunications that Maxine's helped us straighten out with through the year.
Okay.
So, I mean,
So,
it hasn't been dirty when we needed it, so I would.
okay, good. Because
So-
I don't think you would get an outside company like Inside Out to do it for that amount.
Sorry. The janitorial again is basically, would that not be a function? Oh, no, this is the building cleaning. my
This is the
mistake.
building.
I was thinking, wouldn't the fire committee have to be looking after that sort of thing? But it's the building which we own, right? And still continue to do
Right.
so. Yeah.
But I think all of it, again, yet to be clarified, but I believe all of this money will run through the committee, but I do have a question in my list of questions about should the building maintenance still be run by the village or not? Because it's the only, it is specifically in the agreement excluded from co-ownership. So I'm not sure,
It's
but it
our
would still be,
building and we gotta maintain.
but it would still be
That
a
makes sense.
fire expense because it's where we
Yeah,
house the
exactly.
fire department. So we're potentially splitting hairs around. I mean, I think the amount's right, whether it flows through the
Yeah.
village budget or the fire department budget. I think we've got the right kinds of amounts.
And the fire department is, well, we kick in like half or something, so hey, why do we, I guess we don't really want to complain too much.
Okay, number 8, maintenance, so it's up a little bit. The chief and members are exploring, doing some minor modifications to one of the garage doors. The new truck fits in, but barely. and they've sourced out a potential to put in a garage door with a folding section in it, so we could heighten the level of the garage door by a couple of inches, which would give them 2 or 3 more inches of clearance above. So it does fit in, but drives slow and not jerky when you're putting it in and out because it's snow. And then number 9, storm supplies, that is recognition.
Chips.
Chips. You've been brainwashed by Lay's.
Yeah.
That's a recognition of the increasing number of calls related to high intensity storms, like we've seen with Fiona and some of those kinds of things. So when they have to rent specialized equipment, get a truck, maybe rent an extra chainsaw or 2, those kinds of things. Again, we haven't spent that money in the past. Some of it was spent this year and absorbed in the budget. And this is an attempt to say, look, let's start to track that as a separate item to see if it's real, or, you know, if after a couple of years it's only a few $100s, well, then you turn it back into one of the other categories. But at least for the time being, let's track it and get a handle on it of how significant is it.
And we kind of based that, the province did a study and released it late in the fall, the climate changes in Nova Scotia. Kind of the projection into the 2030s, we're gonna see like rapid rainstorms like we saw in wind. Then we're gonna transition into wildland fires into 2040. So we kind of take that report pretty serious, so we want to start, to Jeff's point, we want to track that, and if that number starts to trend high because we're responding to more natural disasters, then we need to be aware of that and maybe look at a broader sense of budgeting around that with federal resources and whatnot.
What would you consider storm supplies?
Well,
Pumps,
so
I'm thinking
could be
basement.
pumps, saws, we rented trucks. We typically man the station depending on the storm, and the last hurricane we manned it for 36 hours. So we feed the crews over there and we work in shifts. And typically we weren't tracking that before it was absorbed in the budget, but with it being a higher occurrence, we should start to track that and see where we're at. Because there is federal relief. Like if you think what happened down in Pictou County, as soon as they declared it a state of emergency, every cent spent can then be recuperated from the federal government. So that hurricane could have just as easily struck us. And if we track that and it's declared a state of emergency, then we could apply to the federal government to have that money spent, basically replaced, so no cost to our local citizens.
So as long as you're tracking the budget, it's an easy task.
Exactly, and it gives us an idea of where those are trending for the next few years, what tracking their way. That's something we need, we need to start, instead of renting new that equipment, is it something we need to look at purchasing, or, are we okay with the way we are?
Good suggestion. Page 40 reflects the capital, and for what it's worth, we did our best to try and put things in the capital category based on our understanding of what constitutes a capital purchase, but there's some potential here that when the audit's done at year end, things that are in the operating budget will get moved to capital, like sometimes the bunker gear is and sometimes it isn't. So it's all about what's the dollar value and how long is it good for and how long before it expires. And so I guess I just say that because it shows as capital for all these items, but some of them may ultimately end up back in a slightly different category at year end based on smart financial people telling us something different. But the issue here is, do we have the numbers right? More so than do we have them in the right spot? So the top line in capital building demolition, no demolition to be done this year at the Windjammer lot. And the tanker, there's some more costs to come before the end of the fourth quarter, but the refit should be totally finished by the end of fourth quarter. So no projected costs in the next year. We're still tracking the hose that was ordered and bought and where that's going to slot in, but it may be that you want to put the money, if the money doesn't get spent this year, you may want to slip it into the fire reserve and then take it out of the reserve next year when the hose actually comes, because it was ordered this year, but it's just taken longer to get than we thought it might. So we're watching the final fit up cost on the tanker, but we're getting close. Project consultant for the new station. So this version shows 40,000, Cody and I. So this is a project manager to come in and help the two partners and the committee figure out what is the design, get us to a class, what's called a Class D estimate. So work us through what's the community consultation look like, make sure that we've got the requirements document that the fire department did right, to maybe do an initial high-level design. So will the building fit properly on the lot? What would the access points look like? Do a geotechnical study and see whether or not the ground settles properly, all that kind of stuff. So it's 40 here. We did a revision on this morning or yesterday, I forget when, but we're suggesting to bump the 511 refit down and bump the project consultant up to 50. So again, it's a pretty broad number. It's based on what Mahone Bay and Berwick spent in their project. So we did a thumbnail sketch based on what we could see from others. What I called low angle rescue here is now called rope rescue. So it's the same ropes, whether it's low angle or high angle. So the guys corrected me to say it's to replace the ropes that they use when they do a rope rescue. So that would be something like Castle Rock. Somebody falls off Castle Rock, needs to be recovered. You need to have certified and proper ropes.
Sorry, Jeff, before we move too far along, the project consultant, is that in process already, or is this a projected future expense? Have we
Sorry,
hired these guys?
we haven't
already?
hired them yet, but we've got a request for proposal draft all done, and the
Okay.
municipality is looking at how to release that with the thought that the consultant could be in place by April or May.
Okay,
Good. Yeah. So yeah, we're in process, but nobody's been hired yet. So next year cost. Sorry, 12 firefighting hand tools. So that's cordless tools to augment some of the things like Jaws of Life and others. So again, when you're well off the road and you're back in a woodland scenario trying to do an extrication from a vehicle or from a building that's collapsed or something like that, you can't always carry the Jaws of Life in there, but you can carry modern battery-powered, lithium-powered equipment in to do some of the things that you might need to do, as well as your training exercises and building equipment and building staged services and those kinds of things where you might be doing a training.
You might have left your extension cord at home.
You might have left your extension cord at home. 13, which we called here, oh, sorry, yeah, so non-structural boots. Should spell rescue properly, I guess.
No, I don't need that seat.
I can't believe Nancy Hatch didn't pick that up.
I'm just keeping my mouth shut.
I'm a little disappointed.
There should be an I in janitorial.
Oh, okay, that was pages ago, I'm over that.
Yes.
I'm over that.
rescue. I mean, it's, the mind fills it in most cases. I saw rescue, I didn't even notice that. But of course, I've noticed other things.
So this is rescue quality boots, but for people that are doing things that don't require or where you wouldn't necessarily want them to be wearing the big turnout boots, right? So if you're doing traffic control all day, you need steel-toed boots and that kind of thing, but you don't want to be wearing those big knee-high boots. When you're fighting forest fires, you don't normally wear those big rubber boots. You wear something where you can move quicker and easier and get out of the way if something should happen. Steel-toed sneakers. So again, it's an F, and those boots are extremely expensive, right? So
Yeah,
the structural boots are really expensive. So it's not just about comfort, it's about if you're in a woodland fire and you have to bail out and you leave behind your boots or whatever happens, like you want to be able both safety and lower cost, right? Heavy extraction airbags, so that's a new one. That's the Bullet 14. So training that the department did, you may recall. Yeah, like October, November, Cody talked about doing a joint heavy extraction training course with some other departments and providers in the area. And one of the things they discovered is they didn't have the ability to move a big heavy piece of equipment. They needed a heavier bag in order to do that. People know what an extraction bag is?
So basically, it's a bullet, for lack of a better term. We use our CVA system to raise them. The ones that we're looking at are a pair like this with the weight capacity to pick up a tractor trailer. The ones we had just didn't have the capacity to pick that up as we learned on the boats. So basically we use them During an extraction, it could be a building collapse, we could be using them. It could be a maybe for a firefighter, that, you know, if the building has come down on them for that, so they're kind of a multi-use badge, we typically use them during the electrification, but.
Are they reusable, Cody, or are they single use?
Oh, no, they have a life, they have a shelf life of 10 years, I think.
So if you use it 10 times, it could still be usable for the 11th,
Absolutely.
if it's within the shelf life.
So we had a mishap with one in the spring or in the fall. And we had to send it back to the company and have it recertified. And then we got it back, but it's, I think that one is 3 years old, so it's got another 7 years in it. We take time to guard them top and bottom to make them last as long as we can. Yeah,
They're not throwaway, is what I was trying to say.
Thank you.
No, definitely not. No, if they become torn,
Yeah, well, like any airbag, they're not gonna be any good.
they're pretty tough though. I've never cut one yet, but we did have one mishap, but it didn't cut. So that's good.
If they could use it in Turkey right now.
That's
Oh,
exactly that.
yes.
Thanks.
Very much.
A wheeled Stokes basket. I'm sure all of you know what that is.
Yeah, it's like a stretcher.
It's like a stretcher basket, but on big rubber tire wheels. So
Yeah,
again, if you're doing an excavation back off one of the trails or down into a piece of woodland where you gotta weave your way in and out between trees, rather than trying to have 4 or 6 guys carry a big guy like me in a basket through the woods, you got them in a wheeled basket that you can wheel them.
And you don't have a department chopper to lower it down.
Yeah, we haven't got a helicopter yet.
Yeah, exactly.
Next year.
Yeah, we're trying to.
That's where you
That
see
new fire
those.
maybe we want.
Search and rescue is where you see those kind of things. Like the average Joe sees them on TV, these sea rescues and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
they're becoming.
They don't
more
have
common.
wheels on them, obviously, but they do
We
the same
have some
function.
baskets, but this one is designed to take the wheel. And we,
special purpose,
yeah, but all the trails, it's pretty hard for us to access the trails.
Very handy on the Chester Connection. Trail.
Absolutely, and
Yeah.
with Castle Rock too, a lot of the stuff that's come to light with our work on Castle Rock. We've made 2 rescues over there this past
Already?
months, yeah, so it's become a point that we said, okay, we've gotta get some equipment to support that endeavor.
Now that it's opened up to more people. it
Yeah,
gives you
it's very
something
popular.
that-
Coveralls, general work and maintenance around the hall, around the trucks, that kind of thing, to protect firefighters' personal gear and personal clothing. 511 refit, as I said, dropped down by 20,000. So here it shows 45. It's down to 25 in the version that's in my office as of yesterday. The project consultant went to 50, and there's a new line in there for dry hydrants. So the department has had a number of places in the service area where they'd like to put in dry hydrants, and had a conversation this year that they should start a process of 1 per year. I think you said there were 3 currently on the list, where there just isn't enough water within a reasonable distance that they can get to. So it's dependent on finding a charming, helpful landowner who's willing to let you get up to their water supply and put in
Very
dry
deep
hydrants.
None of
Yeah, a
the
lake kind of thing.
fire
So
wells are still any good to you anymore?
No, the village commission filled it in about
Oh,
10 years
okay,
ago.
okay.
What's the municipality's role in constructing dry hydrants? That's a question mark,
That's
or?
the answer I get.
Oh, the shrub?
Yeah.
hands off kind of
Yeah.
role.
I've been chasing, so they do budget money for dry hydrant infrastructure in the municipality. They do not have a process in place to utilize it. So, nothing.
Okay.
So,
Now-
excuse me, what exactly constitutes a dry hydrant?
So a dry hydrant is at a static water source, a hand dug pond, a lake,
Oh, okay.
existing pond.
Okay,
And then basically, it's a bit of a process. Typically it needs a permit from the Department of Natural Resources. Sometimes Department of Fisheries, depending on the body of water and how far you have to go to stay below the frost level. Department of Highways, because obviously you have to get off the road to get to it, or sometimes you have to sit in the middle of the road. And then it's basically a pipe that goes below the frost line and out into that body of water below where it freezes.
Like the one down by the ferry wharf.
Yeah.
Does that still work?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, those, so saltwater for
I
us.
understand salt water you don't want.
Yeah, so Dougie used to
Yeah.
dye, well, no, we use salt water regularly, that's, it's not that, you can't keep it clean. And
Yeah.
Dougie just ran out of time to dive down and clean the mussels out of it, so. It just grows, as soon as he gets it cleaned out. it
Oh, the
grows.
pipe,
Yeah, the pipe grows.
Yeah, basically thing that provides the water way out underneath. it.
So there's always some kind of a screening on the end to keep you from picking up garbage. I asked this
And
question
the
yesterday, it's the
muscles
only reason
attach
I know,
themselves
so
to-
the muscles attach themselves to the screening.
like, is the Rhinegold Lake that where you go
No.
yesterday? So you wouldn't know.
No, not there, maybe in time, right, currently at Gold Lake, we go on the saltwater side. And we draft over the little cove.
So that's right out of the Buccaneer, right there, right down in the channel that comes in from the.
Yeah, on the
Yeah.
Duncan Road, on the.
Oh, on that
east
road.
end, yeah. On high tide, we can get out of Scotch Cove there,
Yeah,
but on low tide, it's,
No.
it's a stretch.
I've been down there before.
Fire wells. On Union Street, west of Victoria. There is what I thought was a fire well.
To
Up
my
behind-
knowledge, they were all filled in about 6 years.
Really? There was one up Big Blue,
There, yeah,
and there's one up by my place,
On
in
Union.
behind Medjux there. and Down where
Between
Dr.
Medjug,
Jolly
south-
Warrior used to live,
South
yeah.
of,
Down the road that went to Dr. Jollymore's place.
yes, yes.
It's, was on that right there behind Medjug's house.
That's right.
yeah,
And
Now,
that's gone too.
they were filled.
They were filled in because the wells didn't contain enough water to supply the pumps.
Yeah, so,
I wonder.
you could use them probably for a single story dwelling. But our pumps over the years, we've learned that we need to fight a big fire, so we've increased our pump sizes. And with the increase of pump sizes, the wells became, yeah, you need a lot of water, so
They
They
just.
just
didn't supply.
didn't become fast enough supplies.
Good enough back in the day, but.
Yeah, like back in the day, like, I joined in '97, we still had like 500-gallon minute pumps. You know, now we're anywhere 1,500 gallon minutes to 2,500 gallons a minute, right? So when you crank those numbers,
Yeah.
you need big volumes of water.
Okay, so let's go back to this well on the north side of Union Street. There is a very large cover over it, like from here over to the windows. Now, is that a private well or water source for, Roman's place, you mean that, or the other one? Or Medjug?
My understanding
People on the
was,
other side of the road.
my understanding was there were 6 or 7 all told. When they went to fill them in, or when, if the decision was made that we would fill them in, they were offered to people who were handy if they wished to use the well. So there was one, there's one by where Stephen Flynn lives, that was a fire well. There's one where Joe Flynn lives, that was a fire well. There's one over across from what used to be Harvey Noss's in that field.
Yeah.
That was one. There was one out on the Piglet Road that they filled in.
Yeah.
There was another one on the road going back to Dr. Dollymore's on the right,
Yes, that's the one I was,
that they fill, I think they
I'm
filled.
pretty
still
sure.
has that huge,
Yes, that's,
looks like a garbage box
Yeah.
around it.
Oh,
yeah.
maybe they didn't,
I don't know.
I don't think
I
it
just
is
thought it
filled
was-
in.
I'm not sure.
What was
We
the
have-
But I'm
name of those
wondering
people
if
who live
But it
across?
may have been left, it may have been given to whoever owns the
Yeah.
land, and they may
Yeah.
have done nothing with
Yeah.
it. Too, I mean,
It's the property next door to
Might be worth an inquire, because
the lady
there's a tanker load of water,
whose name I
in it, right?
can't remember.
Like, Doran Playhouse, the tanker offloaded the load of water and then went and got one more load of water to feed while they got the hard pipe set up. So, I mean, if they're still there, nobody's using them, we could use them as
They may
Or
actually
grab a
be
tank
filled
of
in, but
water.
they never took the surround off, which they did.
It doesn't look like it was filled in.
No, it's hard to say. They may still have the surround on it.
That's what I know
They may
about
still
the-
have filled it in.
You got a lot of knowledge there, Carol.
There used to be one with Head Hill too, that's gone.
That one I don't remember, but yeah, there was like 6 or 7.
Yeah, there were a number of them around there.
Anyway, we should move on.
Yes.
So.
So I think we're good. So then transfer to reserves. It's the last thing on that page, and you will see the 50,938. That's the repayment to the apparatus fund for money that was borrowed from apparatus when the property was bought. So,
Is that the end of it, isn't it?
yeah, so 150,000 was borrowed and it was repaid in 3 sums of 50,000 plus interest that would have been earned had the money stayed in the investment account. So that's the last payment there. And the commission for a few years has been putting 150,000 a year aside for fire apparatus. And this year, the department's recommending to bump that up to 200,000. So that would bring you out at a total budget of 736,638. And if you look at the revenue line, you'll see it is 737,210. Something like that.
Good
Oh,
calculation.
damn, well, that's pretty fine.
238.
So we need another.
237, 238.
238.
Yeah,
No, we've
very-
got $600 more than the budget.
Yeah, fairy godmother there.
Well, that's provided everything goes to plan.
Right, and again, if the village and the municipality keep the rate the same and don't say, no, or we don't support that, we want to reduce the rate and we should only put whatever. Anyway, like it's assuming that the rate stays the same. Here are the things that the department would see as being useful and required in order to continue to upgrade and run the department and put aside future investment to upgrade trucks. So there is another truck coming up on its 20-year anniversary in 4 years, and we're now down to $300,000-ish in the fire apparatus reserve. And the department does not have an aerial platform. No decision's been made to buy one, but the department's capital thinking would be in the long term to think about some sort of an aerial apparatus, which will be in excess of $1 million.
Oh,
So-
yeah.
So Jeff, is it fair to say that apart from taking off 20,000 here and adding 10,000 there and adding another 10,000, the fire budget is good to go?
You guys are on board with all of this stuff?
Yeah.
And this was reviewed by the working group that is meeting in lieu of the fire services
Good,
committee.
so they know.
So they saw it and Greg ran them through it, similar, not quite the level of detail I just did, but similar to what I just did. And there were a number of questions asked similar to what you did. Well, what's a airbag and how does it work? What's a this and how does it work? But there was no concerns raised around the amount or the activity or the need or anything like that. So they're not officially a committee, so they can't give a recommendation as such, but they raised no concerns.
It's a good job. So, as all things add up, except for the clerical changes, the fire rate is 7.4 cents. And
That's no change, right?
brings in the required revenue.
Right.
So we're half done.
Half done, yeah.
Any other questions for Cody before he,
No.
not that I tried to get rid of you, buddy,
No, I
but
don't
like,
mind at all. It's been a long couple
You
of
want
days.
more money?
Nope,
Thank
we're,
you,
we're
thank
happy
you
to-
very much, Cody. This process, working with Jeff. Wonderful.
It certainly has. Again, I thank Jeff earlier, I want to thank him again, he made himself available to our entire executive. For some of the newer officers, it was the first time working in this detail of the budget, so there was a lot of questions that I certainly couldn't answer. And Jeff was more than willing to give us some education and help us work through that as they learn how to prepare budgets for their new roles up and coming in the horizon, so.
And basically, at some point, I would assume this budget process would be done by the fire committee, would it not? Then it would come to us.
correct.
And we would say, yeah, okay. And MODC would say, yeah, okay.
Maybe.
We're hoping, how it'll work is we'll present it once to everybody.
Yeah, or, but from a flowing
Yeah,
perspective,
exactly.
they would be sitting here doing this with you, and then, oh, yeah, all of us would be sitting here doing it.
Yeah, and the proposal of having the village administration, as you see here for this year, is that again, the clerk treasurer would be available to work with the department to get the budget ready so that it could then be presented to the two bodies.
So that's part of the time the clerk treasurer spends on fire.
Correct. Yeah.
Or from a building perspective.
This year for the fire has been pleasant from my standpoint. Thank you all very much.
Great, thanks, Cody. We really appreciate
Thanks, Code.
We really appreciate you taking the extra
Hanging
time to
around for
stay.
the other stuff, yeah.
I need a break.
I need
Shall we-
a drink too.
shall we take a stretch?
Shall we,
Yeah.
folks, we'll take a 5-minute or less break.
Okay.
All right, so we're done with fire. Well done. Well done.
Yeah.
I didn't have an intuitive grasp of what we were doing.
Absolutely, yeah.
The kind of, how do we separate this off?
All right, the meeting will now reconvene after our 5-minute break. Thank you. Jeff?
So back to page 32. So I guess if you look at 31, you will see at the bottom of the page, as we talked about, 23, 24, the very last hand column, $480 million in assessment. If you keep the rate the same, 777, you will generate $373,000 in available budget. So I'm not saying you should do that. I'm saying that's what I base the available amount of money on. And that's what you see in the budget documents that it'll come out to that. So you see that in the top line of the revenue source, that's where the
You are
373 comes
muted, but
from.
I'm not muted.
Oh, hang on a
Uh,
second. Okay.
We in? Yeah.
Then you'll see the next line down is the fire rate. So that's the 355 that we just talked about would flow through, and you'll see that flow through to the fire department. Rental income from emergency management, that lease is a 15 or 20-year lease with a set rate, so it's $21,000. Rental income Eastlink is for the tower up between the EMC building and the fire hall. The HST offset grant, so that is, you may recall, a grant that the province has in which villages get a portion of a set amount of a grant based on spending. So this year it was $85,000. All the villages sent in and said, here's how much we spent on HST last year. And if you spent 5% of the village total, then you got 5% of the grant. So it's hard to estimate. Usually we get, as far as I can tell from history, around $3,000. Last year, for some reason, either other villages didn't submit or we had a higher HST budget, but we got about 5,000. But I bumped it back down to 3,000 just to be on the safe side. Now, with the fire truck this year, we may in fact be higher again, but like given that it's a revenue thing, I figured it was better to be conservative than over the top. And then the transfer from other governments, that's the grant that we talked about in my activity report where we applied to the federal government for money to hire summer staff. So that's the revenue side.
Does the rent ever change for EMC, like the 3 years, or it's 15 years at the same rate?
It's like 12 or 15 years at the same rate.
Now, the rent changed a few years ago when renovations were requested and done. But the rent only paid for the renovations over a period of time.
The agreement does have clauses in it that says we pay for the plowing and something else, and they pay for certain things. But then if they have specific renovation requests, that can be added to the rent.
Okay.
But the rental rate is set for as I read it, is set for the life of the agreement.
Jeff, I couldn't find 3 and 4 on the budget, just in the notes.
They come later on somehow. I had that same problem.
They're on page
I
36.
did so many versions of this,
Yeah,
maybe I
they're
dropped.
later in the document,
okay.
yeah, I think.
Sorry, I thought I went through everything, but
I gave up on them and then they showed up.
Oh, that's because I-
Budget.
That's no doubt because I cut and moved things around, so my
You know what?
apologies
I'll
for
bet
that.
you they belong in the fire budget.
They
I
probably
think they
were
are there
originally in the
somewhere,
fire
yeah.
budget. Yeah, you're probably
I
right.
did see them later on. I thought, oh, that's where they went.
Yeah, but they probably later on in the fire budget. That's probably right. Because they are.
Yeah, no truck
truck-
purchase expected.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking that maybe because we hadn't sorted out the committee thing, that somehow or other something had crept into this
Yeah.
budget.
No,
It's
and
on
I
page
think,
36, Geraldine, for the village budget.
No,
there's
she's-
no-
No,
she's
the
talking about the
numbers 3
footnotes.
and 4 are not in.
Yeah,
the-
3 and 4 don't exist.
yeah, I made a
Three
mistake.
is on
Farther
page
down in the
38.
Not
fire budget,
infallible
yeah.
or.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think number 4 will no longer flow to the
Page
village,
30,
Yeah.
is referring to the fire boat
Yeah.
budget.
Oh,
right?
oh,
That's what
okay.
that is.
Okay.
So 3 it was reduced because we didn't buy a truck, and 4 was the fireboat budget will no longer flow to the village. But then I amended it and took those things out and forgot to correct the number order, so I will do that. Correct.
So much fun to catch Jeff in mistake, it's so
Footnote.
seldom.
No.
So minuscule stuff.
Yeah.
All right. So 33, top of the page. So governance honorariums are up because we now have 5 commissioners who all get honorariums. So that number is up. Property tax exemptions may in fact go up because you did increase the percentage amounts, the limits, but we don't know the estimate for that yet. So that is one area in which, when we think about what will we do with, do you want to increase any of these numbers? Property tax exemptions and nonprofit tax exemptions are places where you may want to think about putting some additional money. And when you ask that we write a new property tax exemption for nonprofits, the suggestion was we would put a number in there for a maximum amount
Per year.
per year, but we didn't talk about what that number would be.
Okay.
So whatever your inclination is on that number should go on that slot number 5. Like if you're saying, we'll give property tax exemptions based on a per diem rate up to $3,000 or $2,000 or whatever the number is, that's the number that should go in that
Okay.
box number 5. Next section, administration, office rent went up because we renegotiated the lease. So this is the new number that's in the new lease.
Well, the new lease was quite a jump.
Yeah, it went from 12.5 to 18, right? So it went up by 30%. It hadn't increased in, I forget off the top of my head, 3 years, 4 years. So it was a fairly significant jump when it went up. Cleaning, that's the one we talked about when we talked about the fire department budget. So it had in the past, the cleaning for this building had accidentally been charged to the fire hall. So we corrected that. Audit, as you see, we're not quite at that level yet this year, but we'll get to 5,000.
Lawrence come in for the interim.
Not yet. So usually Lawrence comes in for the interim mid-February. I had an initial back and forth with him and he said he would let me know a couple weeks ahead because we'll need to schedule an audit committee meeting prior to the audit starting to confirm the terms of reference. So I have that on my list to circle back with him and get a date. And the audit committee is all of you plus
Sandy Demaris.
Sandy Demaris, who's the community representative. And there's 2 community representatives, but we've never been able to find, my understanding is they've not been able to find a second person. So if any of you know somebody who's fascinated by budgets and auditing and would like to be on the audit committee, it literally is 2 meetings a year for about an hour and a half each, if that. So
Friendly account.
your local friendly accountant. Employee wages, based on 70,000 for the new clerk treasurer, and then half a Maxine, and then charging a portion of it through the fire department as you've done other years to the fire service. Again, that may be a place, given that you haven't found your replacement clerk treasurer, that you may want to build a little flexibility in there and think about, you want to add a little bit there just in case you need it. The rest of them are pretty straightforward. We bumped down office supplies just because we're coming well under. Employment Insurance Canada pension plan up a little bit because we're up a little bit this year. Most of them stayed pretty much the same. The insurance premiums, we bumped up a little bit from, oh, sorry, not these insurance premiums.
Medical insurance?
That's coming, sorry, I made a mistake. So medical insurance, we bumped up a little bit just because we have 5 commissioners now instead of 3 or 4 or whatever. This is
What's that, medical insurance?
You can get it
If you're under
want it.
70.
Yeah,
Well, then how come we're budgeting for it?
How come what?
because
You pay for it.
Maxine and Jeff have to pay for theirs, somebody has to pay for theirs.
We all pay, so it's a cost shared medical plan between the village and the
You have
participants.
to be under 70.
But you have to be under 70 to get the medical plan.
Damn.
It was in your orientation binders,
Oh, God, come on.
and I'm sure at the time you went, oh, damn, and then forgot about it.
Yeah.
I won't
Yeah.
tell you how good the insurance is, it's
Yeah.
really good.
But
Lloyd-
the new clerk treasurer, of course, will
We'll
have
need it,
something
yeah.
there.
One would think, yeah. Employee benefits was salary payout at the end of the last treasurer, so it's gone. So there you see the insurance premium. I allowed a little bit that it may go up again next year, so I allowed, I think, 10% is what the
What
note
are we
says.
insuring exactly?
That's everything. So that's the
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 building
liability insurance for all of you in the village, should somebody
Yeah.
slip and fall in one of our buildings, hurt themselves at the pool. It's contents of this building, it's the fire insurance on the washroom building, it's
Okay,
all of that. It's a general policy that covers everything for the village outside of the fire department members and spouses medical coverage, which is a totally separate policy.
So D and O's in there too?
D&O, it's all in there, yeah. And any of you that would like to read that policy, I'd like, it's quite complex, so I'm absolutely glad to share it. Because I would
Randy,
not,
like a copy.
I would not be a good guy to summarize it.
Oh, yeah.
Find it what you can't have.
Yeah, well, exactly. No, I just wondered if that was also rolled in or came somewhere else.
Lido, bullet 10, you just see that we kept the number the same, but we combined together repairs and maintenance. So it, you know, some things it was like, oh, well, if you're fixing a stuck toilet, that's
Yeah,
maintenance, but if you're
right.
if you're replacing a broken door, that's a repair. So
yeah.
it just got to be too bizarre in terms of trying to track it. So we just rolled it into one maintenance and operations. That includes all of the cleaning stuff, by the way, which is the vast majority of that.
So that's why Lido repairs is
So why-
unbudgeted this year. is
That's
that
right,
correct? Yeah.
correct.
Why do we need separate insurance for them after we've already paid $19,000 insurance?
It's just because of the way we break out so the total insurance bill from Gallagher's is $28,000.
Wow.
But it is broken out in the bill by, this is the portion that covers so the one in administration is the liability, the contents of this building, a few other things. Signage, the 4 big signs that are roadside, a few other things, but then there's also a specific clause in there that says contents of the Lido and the Lido building,
I
the
won't
fire
ask
hall
anymore.
building. No, those great questions. I'm glad to answer them. Glad to answer them. So yeah, I again allowed just a little bit of an increase next year, given the way that rates are going. Lifeguard wages, we bumped up a little, we bumped back up to where it used to be on the assumption, as we talked about earlier, that we'll be able to get a full complement of lifeguards. Taxes dash waste collection at the bottom, that is the MODC charge that everybody pays to get your garbage picked up. So it's not actually taxes, it's the waste collection
Yeah.
fee. that everybody
What
pays.
is supervisor security? It's after curiosity.
Oh, it's a great question. The week of race week, a number of years ago, apparently there was some vandalism at the Lido and people crawling over the fence and swimming in the middle of the night. So they started a practice of hiring 24-hour a day security guards for 4 days during race week, the weekend.
It's not 24 hours, it's 5 o'clock,
Sorry.
9 o'clock, 5 o'clock at night till 9 in the morning, or vice
Yeah,
versa,
sorry, it's overnight security, not 24 hours.
8 hours.
Yeah, it's dark,
Thank
dark
you,
till daylight.
Maxine.
That's right, somebody who's smart enough to know what we actually do. 34, so maybe what I'll do is run through the budget numbers and then I'll let you come back, but Carol, to your question, there's the very top line is the flowers, so 22,000. That is both the purchase of the flowers from the greenhouse, which is around $3,500, top of my head. Which have already been ordered for next year. Doesn't mean, I'm sure they're not planted yet, so we probably could change that.
I
if
bet
you-
you they are planted.
Oh, they
Yeah,
probably
they're planted
planted.
by
We had to let them
November.
know by November.
Anyway, if they're ordered for next year, 75 of them, and then it's the contract for putting them up, watering them, taking them down, disposing of the soil and returning them, picking them up at the greenhouse and returning them to the greenhouse. So that's all including the flowers, wreaths, same thing. That's pick them up in New Ross, put the bows on them, hang them, take them down. And then celebrations is the grant money essentially that you use to provide to nonprofit groups that might have an interest in a grant of some sort.
So you say that this is already ordered for this year. So
The,
then you could say that you're not going to do it for another year, you're gonna use that money to look at a different.
Or we could
you,
say,
you could say,
this is what it is for this year.
Yeah.
This summer, we'll get together and hash the whole damn thing out and make a decision. Are we doing it or aren't we doing it? And bear the
And what
brunt,
are the
the wrath
alternatives?
of the citizens if we do or if we don't.
so that was the last time this was discussed, was late summer when we were getting ready to take the baskets down. There was a discussion about, do you want to do this? If you guys would.
No.
Cameras Cove wanted them, remember?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
what I was-
Yeah, we had a big.
Anyway, there was a discussion about, do you want to do baskets, Dan? Do you want to do the same color baskets again? Do we want to do them from the same place? Do you want to do banners instead? Like there was all that discussion and we ended up going with, no, let's stick with what we've traditionally done. So is it possible to change that amount? You could do more, but I guess we've ordered them. You could not put some of them up and water them all year and do something else with them, I guess, but you have ordered 75 baskets from the greenhouse and are committed probably to the $3,500-ish that costs you. And we had talked about doing a multi-year contract for flower basket maintenance. But if you're seriously considering that you may not do them, we should do a 1-year contract. So I have that on my list to try and get ready before the end of March.
Well, guess what? I would say that there's a good chance that you won't have to do that on your list. That
Well,
we
you
should go with a 1-year contract.
Right, we still have to do
And
a
hammer this out
a
this
tender.
summer,
okay.
but how do the rest of you feel?
I agree.
Okay,
I think we should do something, whether flowers are the way to go or,
Yeah, we're
Or
just
not,
considering
yeah.
something, but
yeah,
Well,
but
you could-
but that something might be to
We'll
go
find
away
out
from the
this
status
summer,
quo,
yeah.
yeah.
And you could obviously do some mix, right? Like you could do half as many flower baskets and save significant amount of money potentially on the maintenance costs and do banners or something on the other poles, right? Or some other thing, right? You don't have to say all or none. It's not that kind of scenario, right? You could make some decisions. Okay, 1-year contract flower baskets. Well, that should be easy because I'll just pull out the old one and
excellent.
change some
That's
dates.
how it's always
Done.
been done, yeah.
Okay, yeah. Operations, so compost collection, I need to do some confirming, so that number is still draft, but I need to check and see. I don't know, Maxine, if you know off the top of your head, if we have a multi-year contract for that
No,
or?
every year, and I'll have to check with them.
Okay, so we'll double check that number before the next meeting.
That's for the every second week one. yeah.
That's correct, every
Something like
second
that.
week in the summer. Washroom costs, sorry, I said to you to clean that the maintenance at the Lido included the washer cleaning. It doesn't. Washer cleaning is here under 5960. That's what that 15,000 is. But we do not have anything in here. If you wanted to, last year we had Ellen, I think her name is, from the municipality, who's a certified accessibility coordinator, come down and do a review. And she suggested some modest things like door openers and change the mirror in the bathroom and a few modest things. It's not required yet, as I understand it, under the act, but it soon will be, like soon within the next 3 years or 4 years. kind of
And
thing.
I'm looking into some grants for that.
Yeah.
Good.
Okay.
Yeah, but
Giblock's pretty straightforward. Protection, so streetlights is gonna be more expensive than this. So this is the power bill and all maintenance for the streetlights. That 5328 that you see under third quarter does not include the repairs that we had to do on the Water Street. That we had to do on the Water Street power supply box that we just had done. And that's gonna be probably close to $8,000. But providing that, just that, in addition to what's here. But providing nobody backs into any of our gear or equipment, that shouldn't get repeated. So we put it back down to a more reasonable kind of level.
could you determine why we were not insured for that, considering that we give the insurance company so much money?
Because when I called the insurance company, they said no insurance company will insure streetlights or posts. Because people keep backing into them and hitting them with trucks and knocking
And
them
then they
down.
just drive away.
Naughty souls.
They're an uninsurable item, but I did ask.
Okay.
Crossing guard wages, you'll see a little note there, not to suggest that you have to put them up, but just a footnote that says we pay the crossing guards $15 an hour and have for a number of years. And in October, the province recently announced they'll be putting minimum wage up to $15 an hour. So whether or not that would prompt any thinking as to whether or not you would want to change that, totally up to yourselves, but I just pointed it out. I'm not suggesting anything.
Has there ever been a study, like how many kids actually cross?
I've never seen a big cross.
Not that I'm aware of.
I actually have.
Have you?
If you happen to be coming downtown from the grocery store or something at a specific
I
times
go
of
by
day,
there a lot.
Sherry's there.
Right.
And mostly it was the other
Charlotte's there in the
people.
morning.
Yeah, and Sherry in the afternoon, and I have actually been there when she walked out into the street and about 10 kids went across. But whether that occurs on any given day more than once, I don't know.
We were going to the liquor store. No.
But those kinds of things, it's really hard unless you go sit there and monitor just what gets done. I'm sure it's something that the parents appreciate, I'm sure. Whether it gets used all that much, who knows?
Well, I
Yeah,
think adults use it too.
Yeah.
I've actually seen adults cross there.
And my question would be, what is minimum wage now?
1368.
1368. So if we were to add, which is above, we're paying above minimum wage
At
now,
this
so,
time.
so
And
why
have
would we?
been for a number of
Since
years.
it started.
So why do we not just continue to add that extra $1.50 or $2 or whatever it is to make this job more agreeable, perhaps to the person who does it? I mean, it's a mean job.
Cold
The
and-
weather and
and wet.
cold and all that sort of thing, so.
That's the call of you folks.
Yeah,
I can put any number there you want.
No.
I did that in my notes too, so that certainly is food
Well, what
for
if-
discussion.
So this will run from when now? This will run from.
1st of April to the end of March next year.
But the minimum wage doesn't go up till September, does it?
It goes up once in the spring. I'm sorry, I don't remember the dates, but I think it goes up like to 1430 or 1450 or something in April, and then it goes up to $15 an hour in October. So they're accelerating the minimum wage to catch up with what some of the. places have
6
done.
months early.
Well, maybe we should budget for like 17 or something. And then
Yeah.
we don't have to decide.
Well,
And
what's your issue with it?
I was thinking 25 cents.
Oh, my dear girl, it's not
She's
1957 anymore.
You are on camera.
No, it's certainly,
We could budget for $2 more. It doesn't even have to
we don't actually have to.
decide, but we want to budget for, you've got September, well, what is it, April, say, so you got May and June.
So they work about, what, an hour and a half in the morning and an hour.
1.75 in the morning, 1.75 in the afternoon.
There you
So
go.
3.5 a day.
Well, yeah, 3.5 hours a day.
How many of them are there
Two.
actually? So it's just Charlotte and Sherry.
Just Charlotte and
basically?
Sherry at
Okay,
the moment,
yeah.
yeah.
It's $10 a day if you put.
It's about,
So if we budget with $10 more a day.
and you don't have to decide that tonight. I mean, that we're not asking for approval here,
No, no,
but,
but for the budgeting though. Oh,
Yeah.
right, I see what you mean.
right? Like, so if you wanna think about that and give me some advice, or if you think $1 an hour extra each or two or whatever, I can calculate some numbers and put them in there and send another version of it. Right?
Right.
Again, I wasn't suggesting you had to, I was merely pointing out that you have paid above minimum wage, and now you will be paying at minimum wage. So if that's an issue,
What I would like to suggest is whatever the difference is between minimum wage and what we're paying, that we maintain that difference as the minimum wage goes up.
Yeah, that was, I think that's how Kim used to do it. It was like she paid X number of dollars above what was the minimum at that time. And,
But we've been paying the crossing guards $15 an hour
mhm,
since we've had crossing guards.
mhm.
The minimum wage of the province at that time was like $8.93.
So it's time we caught up.
So then the province is finally catching up to
Mm.
what a minimum wage is. But if we increase what we're paying by the difference that it was then, means we'll be paying $20 an hour.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm thinking more what the difference is at present as opposed to
No, I'm not
what we
saying
did in
that.
the past, way back.
You don't want to worry about
No.
now.
Well, I would move that we make the minimum wage for crossing guards $17 an hour,
Up $2 an hour.
up $2 an hour.
Now, what would you suggest that we do for the Lido lifeguards who are making 18 an hour? Do they go to 20 an hour now?
and 15 for helpers. Now, they're not year-round, long-term employees either, to be fair.
I'm
Standing on the
only
winter.
talking crossing guards at this point.
I mean, I can go away, so I'm happy if you make a motion, I never try to discourage a motion, but I'm also happy to, like, this is a preliminary budget, I'm happy to go away and say if we kept it, the differential the same, and what would that look like over each of the next two raises, and give you a new number? And then what would it look like if we added $2 an hour, what would that look like? And then you'd have some numbers to look at and kind of,
I just looked up, so it's 14.50 April 1st,
wasn't too far off.
15 for us.
I would invite you to do that exercise, Jim.
Okay,
Cheryl did make a motion, right? She's gonna
Oh,
withdraw.
I
it,
never
or
got
what?
a second yet. So you're set.
Yeah, so it ain't a motion.
Well,
Unless anybody wants to second it, we can continue the discussion. Or, Carol, would you like to
I can withdraw it.
amend it to say, Jeff, would you please?
I can do that. I would move that we consider raising the hourly rate for the crosswalk guard to $17, but that we defer a decision until Jeff supplies us with some comparison numbers that we can look at.
Some figures, great.
yeah,
Seconder,
I'd second that.
thank you, Randy. All in favor?
Aye.
Carried.
okay. Thank you. It's good to have your action. Okay, so that's the end of page 34. So that really sums up, again, recognizing that there's a few places there that you may want to put some additional money, so like the tax relief programs and the wage categories and a few things there. That brings you in at just over $300,000. And I said to someone today, keeping in mind that the guy who wrote the budget has worked for municipal government for all of 8 months. So, like, you may also want to build in a little contingency that whoever wrote the budget didn't know what he was doing as well as he might have. So there could be some places where I was like, oh, that should stay the same. And we'll check on the garbage collection fee, because that could change as well.
Sorry. Again, can I ask where you slot in tourism for the village?
So whatever tourism in the past, well, we can do whatever the commission wants, has been under celebrations. So no active activity direct by the village commission, but rather
Organized
giving
by-
money to nonprofit groups who are doing work that reflects on tourism. Doesn't mean you couldn't do your own work. So when we get to the end, one of the things I would say is, and I think we had sent out saying, do you think there are areas the village should do more? Tourism might be one of those areas where you say, should we stimulate something to happen in that area? Why don't we finish running through page 35, and then you guys can have all of that discussion about what's not in here that you'd like to
Okay.
see. So 35, top of the page is just emergency services building. So based off of what we've done the last few years, maintenance and repairs, insurance coverage bumped up a little bit, taxes, and at the EMC building, you only get tax exemption if it is a building used for purposes of the village, providing services to citizens. So the EMC building is a rental property, so it gets taxed at a commercial rate because EMC is not a service to the village. It's a rental agreement that you have with the province. So you have to pay full taxes there, not just the garbage fee. That's why that's 4,800. So shows the budget at 10.1, and traditionally you would move that money, you'll see in the next line down under reserves. So you get 21,000 from your rental income, you spend 10. Traditionally, you've moved the balance into a special EMC reserve for when building needs repairs, or if the roof blows off, or you have to replace the heating system, or whatever those capital costs might be. And we talked about having a building assessment done on that building because it's 15 years old, 14 years old. Anyway, there was some interest in having a look at the roof and making sure that structurally is there anything coming up, that kind of stuff. It didn't get done this year, but it's been talked about for the last year or two. I think that was a issue that Martin and Michael thought would be useful to do. Then you'll see general government operating, that 65,000. So that is the money that currently, if you don't put any more money in tax relief, you don't put any more money in salary, you don't increase the wages of the lifeguards, that's where it's currently showing in the budget is it would go into the reserve. Everything you do in the budget would reduce that $65,000 number down potentially to zero. Or if you didn't collect the same tax rate, obviously that number would go down. And then I noted the Lido reserve. There is a reserve for Lido. No repairs were done at the Lido 22 or 21. But prior to that, $40,000 in repairs were done every year. It does need some repairs that 3 years ago were estimated to be worth around $160,000. I think there's around $120,000 in that reserve. And we also applied for a federal grant to do some accessibility work at the Lido, primarily a ramp to get from the parking lot down to the pool deck. And that would require some matching money. So it's another place that you could, once again, put money into the Lido reserve, which was done for a number of years, but hasn't been done.
So you've already applied for it? Or any-
We've already applied for the for the
Is that
federal,
through the, oh, it's federal.
it's
okay.
federal. For
Is the
the,
legal reserve showing here or like?
No, it's not.
Oh.
there's no money there. There was no money put in last year.
Okay.
I'm just saying
Oh, we
when.
have an existing one. but
Right,
I
you
don't
have
see
an
that.
existing reserve. I didn't put the number on here, but there
Okay.
is money in a reserve, so there's a place to put it if you think that's a place to set some money aside. Again, I'm not suggesting you do that. There's a general government reserve, an emergency services reserve, and a Lido reserve already set up with some money in them. And you could, again, put money there. You could also set up new reserves for other things that you might see coming or that you might not think the government general reserve would cover. And then that very last line is just, as we talked about before, 355,000 is going to flow into the village. and then it's gonna go out to CVFD, and that's all reflected in that budget that we've already reviewed with the members here.
That's
Okay,
it. That makes sense.
so I've got a couple of questions.
She's the chair.
Ask away.
No, you go ahead, Nancy. Sorry, I didn't realize.
No, go ahead.
Okay, it's just because I'm no longer familiar with financial statements anymore. I used to be pretty good at them, but I'm not clear in the reserve section.
Okay.
Okay, so when you have Energy Services reserves, it's under 22-23, so that's this year, correct? And so you're not putting anything under reserve? You're putting, like those numbers under 23-24. You're suggesting that we will have $65,000 on budget money to go into general government reserve? Is that how I'm reading that?
Correct.
Okay.
If you don't
If we
make
don't
other
do it,
decisions
Yeah,
for it.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure it's reading it correctly.
Yeah. So in 22-23, you had 11,556 more come in from EH services than you expected to spend.
But
And
we
we-
keep it in a
And
reserve.
we moved that money into a reserve. And I'm just saying, if you follow that practice, which has been the practice for a number of years,
Yeah.
this year, because we bumped the expenses up a little bit and the revenue stayed the same, you would have 11,156. And theoretically, at the end of the year, if we didn't actually spend the full amount that we budgeted, 9,700 last year, you might have an extra $600 or something left over from 22-23 that you would also
Yeah, you
slide
back
into the
into-
reserve.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure it was reading it.
Yeah. I also didn't put in here, it occurs to me, I didn't put any estimate for the fire truck. So when we sell the old pumper, that money is required under the Municipal Finance Act to go into the apparatus reserve. So whatever amount you
Won't
get from it,
Won't that automatically transfer to the committee at some point? rather
It'll
than in
be-
Our budget?
not necessarily the committee, the agreement says it'll be co-ownership by us and the municipality.
Okay,
So the apparatus wouldn't go to the, as I read it, would not go to the committee, it would go to joint ownership of the two partners. But either way, it's still, I guess I'm just saying, don't think about whatever money you get from the fire truck as a bonus, so we can go do more flower baskets with that.
Has to go.
It's required to go to the apparatus reserve and be
That's-
spent on fire, future fire.
Carol wanted more baskets. Super sad now.
Bigger baskets, same number,
Carol
but
wants
bigger.
bigger and she wants them not.
Multi-tier.
Where is the accounting for the interest we're gonna make on our investments in here? They're in a reserve or
Yeah, so
something.
just automatic, and I don't,
Stay where they went.
yeah, I don't know how to account for it in here,
Yeah,
but yes,
how much
when we.
buckage will we have?
Every year you invest, so far, you're investing your money in 1 year GICs.
Yes, yes.
And when you cash that GIC, you reinvest whatever interest you earn back in the investment account every year.
I thought they would have to be accounted for somewhere.
Well,
As
they-
reserve,
there's a-
cash reserve.
there's another sheet that shows the reserves, a
Oh,
completely
okay.
separate page.
Okay.
That I didn't give you, that shows how much is in the
Yeah.
reserves
Yeah,
and
that's
how much
fine.
interest you earn.
There's
And I-
121,000 in the
That's fine.
Lido.
I just wondered,
Yeah.
did we not have to show it somewhere?
Yeah, and
That's
so-
not something we want to keep putting on, because it's only gonna be a bigger.
I know, it's going to get more and more expensive. We should be, in my opinion, contributing to the Lido Reserve annually.
And we talked maybe about a big fundraising event, like I think that's an easy, people have an attachment, right? to it.
Well, I mean, if 2 years ago, the estimate was 160,000.
That's what I'm thinking.
Repairs is
Oh, for
probably
the
200
fix.
now.
But we discussed that when Martin was still here, I think, about
Mm-hmm.
should we go all the way or just do partial work? And I
Patchwork,
remember that, yeah. And I think
Something
the
like that.
consensus at that time was let's get it all done and be done.
I think Yeah, so the company, the commission had been doing a section, so it's primarily the outside wall, although there is work to be done to the inside wall. So from the yacht wharf, whatever you guys call it, where the water lots are,
Hmm,
around to the center of the outside wall is all done. It's been done within the last 5 years. From there, around to the bridge side is not done. It would be, I think, 2 or 3 sections, I think, and then some work to the back wall. And the idea was they were doing it in $40,000 a year increments. And 2 years ago, the company said, if you do it in $40,000 a year increments, every time I come, I've got to ship my equipment down here, I gotta bring my
Costs
gear,
more.
blah, blah, blah. If you do it all at once,
Significant.
you'll get a 10% or 15% reduction, because I can just bring my gear, do it all, take my gear away.
By the time you reach the end, you'll have to start over again because the old stuff has failed.
And part of what happens now is that, so you probably noticed in Facebook and some of my activity reports that we've had to drain the pool a couple of times.
Yeah,
Water runs down the hill and it runs behind, as I understand it, it runs in behind the wall and then bubbles up through between the wall and the floor and helps fill the pool. So you get runoff from the hill that actually goes into the pool because it's not properly ditched and drained and sealed. And
We could have a humongous fundraiser. And demolish the pool and rebuild it.
oh, I think you'd find that'd be a couple of mil or something.
At least.
This is for a future commission. We'll fix this.
Once we retired safely.
Now, there is a conversation underway, as you all, I think, probably know, with the municipality about what to do at Parade Square in terms of tourism and infrastructure improvements at Parade Square, both on your side and on the village side, or on the municipal side. And again, we've been talking, Geraldine and I have been talking about grants the last few days. Is there a possibility that in a future year you might wrap together some accessibility upgrades, fix the pool, some work to the grounds, replace some of the picnic tables into a bigger project that's more eligible for some grant funding and also a target for some fundraising? Again, I think that's a possibility, probably not in 23, but maybe in 24
Yeah.
would be my guess.
It seems to me that there are many little issues with the pool, like runoff from the hill. Underground water seeping in through the floor. It would be interesting to have a full assessment done of the area and find out, let's get it fixed once and for all and take a breather. If it's at all
Is there
possible.
just one company or are there many companies? Like,
I never looked into it, Commissioner, but my assumption is there's a multitude. I think the village has always used the same company, right? So I think the quote we have is from the company that had done the work over the years, but I'm sure there's multiple companies that do that kind of work.
And anything that's open to the sea is never going to be
No, you know,
100%, but it's never gonna have to be fixed again. you know.
There is a grant program that I saw online today for like a small pre-project planning grant that you can use for engineering studies and
Oh.
proposal writing and community consultation. I forget the exact details of it. It's from Community Culture and Heritage with the province. We could dig that out and see if that might be a way to get a
get some quotes.
more
and-
robust assessment done on what's
I
needed
think I might
overall.
even have it in this collection, because I was going through all of those too.
Oh, yeah,
I was
yeah.
gonna bring you guys a presentation once I got everything together.
Great.
And I think we'll have more
That-
time on our
that
hands.
one,
We won't
I
have
didn't,
fire
I didn't
trucks and
realize that
whatever.
the Lido needed that kind of assessment, so I'm glad I know that now.
Well, I think the assessment we've got is like 3 years old from one company. So I think to your point, Commissioner Fine, maybe, it wouldn't be a bad idea to refresh that and get somebody to look at it. That assessment, it said that the floor of the pool was fine, although there is water that gets in under it, and they recommended doing some sealing around the outer edges. But, you know, it's been 5 years, so it probably wouldn't be a bad idea to refresh some of that stuff before you spend a bunch of money on the wrong thing, I suppose.
So
I have the assessment on my desk.
is our agreement with MODC far enough along that they came down and pumped the road, or did somebody else have to do that? That in January, late January.
Oh, I drink.
You did.
Yeah, it drains by gravity. So I did that.
Oh, I-
I've done it a couple times.
It's sort
We're
of.
gonna have to teach the new clerk.
Yeah.
Can't
No,
have ice in a pool in the winter.
it brought me to thinking about whether or not, how are we doing with the MODC doing our work for us thing, or is it anything new to?
I checked in with them about a week ago and they are waiting for final sign off from their lawyer. Maybe their insurance company.
There was a note about that.
Yes, you did say it was in progress, but I wondered if you knew
No,
how far
I-
along it was.
yeah, my sense is imminent, but
Yeah, I'm just thinking if something like that happens and we have no one to take care of it.
I'll show you before.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there are things that could potentially that Paul might have done back in the day.
Well, we'll just have to
And
train
so
you
I
up.
get, well, I guess I spoke, but I'm not cheap.
No, I think that'll be in place before I
Not
go.
like Nancy, huh?
I think that'll be in place before I go.
All right, is there anything further?
So how do
I
you
think we've got
wanna,
Lots to think about.
yeah, do you wanna, again, I mean, that normally you would look to approve the budget by the 1st of April, but last year we didn't get the budget approved until June or July, like it was just
Oh,
before the annual meeting. It has to be approved before the annual general meeting. That is the Municipal Government Act rule.
When's
So
AGM?
June, late June, early July usually, right?
It's before the AGM is before the 1st of July. At some point before the 1st.
Yeah, and then followed immediately thereafter by the election.
Well, when it came to us as the new commissioners
In
last
July,
year,
yeah.
it was pretty well
A done
set
deal.
at that point. So I don't know when it achieved being set.
Mhm.
Just before you.
Just before we got there. But it looked finished and complete and everything. It wasn't like, oh gee, what's this gap here? Or, oh gee, wow, what the big
Well, may
gap
I
there?
have a motion then to adjourn?
No,
Carol had something she.
I
wanted to
asked
say.
about tourism,
And Laura, you've got something?
well, for the Commissioner
for it.
Roundtable, I have two events.
Oh, I'm sorry,
That's okay.
I'm tired.
Yeah, we got
Two
the
things,
roundtable.
so, your former tenants or Syrian family who are living in the Catholic League.
Mhm.
Their sister is in Gaziantep, right in the middle of the earthquake. She's 7 months
Oh,
pregnant
geez.
and with a very risky pregnancy and a husband and a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old. And it is, they slept 10 women and children in a car the last 3 nights at -5. It is horrific. So we have a little fundraiser that I shared, and I was going to ask permission. They are their only family in the village. So we didn't have any, if we might share that fundraiser, if the board approved it on the village page. And then we're not, they are actually approved for immigration, but it's a 1 to 2 year wait.
Jeez.
So we had been, because inflation is 68% in Turkey, it's dreadful. They're already in terrible shape. And now and the husband sneaked back into the condemned building to grab their papers and her medication, because without the papers, they're. And it was all, we've collected since yesterday, $3,500, and we'll just dole out as they need. We're trying to get them to Istanbul. So if, with your permission, maybe we just share our little story and fundraising requests on the village page, but that's up to you. And then the part
Pretty
two,
much need you guys.
yeah, not Jeff
Okay.
again. And part 2 is on the CBC community contact, and next week on Wednesday, we're doing the tanker. She said, "Oh, I don't know if people in New Glasgow are gonna care about your tanker," and I said, "Well, it's pretty interesting." So Jeff, I spoke to Jeff today, and Cody, we've got lots of notes, and we'll make it interesting.
And when is it next?
Well, if you do it like you did
When
in
is it gonna
Caboose, you
be?
did a nice job.
When is it? It's gonna, I think it's next Wednesday at 6:15
Okay, so
AM.
next week.
Too bad you can't show the picture on the side.
Well, they'll put the picture on, and we're talked a lot about that, and I know everything about the mural, the
Yeah,
wrap, it's called a wrap,
the wrap.
the 3M wrap. And they will often post accompanying pictures on their website.
Oh, cool.
I think they put your tree on, I did something.
So are the Syrian folks, they're trying to come here or
So
just as far as this?
they have to flee Syria, so it's only actually 100 kilometers from Aleppo where they are in Turkey,
Oh,
but there's
geez.
3.6
Yeah, but
million.
Aleppo.
3.6 million Turks, Syrians are there.
So is the husband got any professional?
No, he's
Credits.
24.
Oh,
He's-
just
He was
young.
working in a carpet factory,
Yeah.
but because the economy is so bad,
Yeah,
there's very little work and the Turks don't. Now you're taking our job. right?
yeah.
So it's quite dreadful.
So to the
But did you
question
say
of,
they were approved?
Yeah, so this is the family here, it's their daughter, they're approved, but that's still a 1 to 2 year waiting list. We're kind of hoping that they might rush them through, but with her pregnancy, high risk, there's nobody's putting her on a plane.
but to the question of can a nonprofit community organization ask the village to just pass along
Just
to,
to share it.
to share.
Not really information.
right, as information, a fundraiser? Is there any concern
But
about that?
and that's fine if not, I mean, you don't
Yeah,
have
I
that
don't-
many followers, but I just think they're part of our village, they sell at the farmer's market, they would Carol's tenants.
Put them on Facebook too, you mean, or something?
Well, I did a little thing and I told them what happened, told the situation
Yeah.
in Turkey, because people think, they see it on the news, and like, oh yeah, look at that. It's really connected to the village.
I'll share it on Derek's page.
Okay, oh, good.
So basically, you're not talking about our little website for the village. that's
Well, I
not-
did mean
Yeah,
that.
I was
because
thinking Facebook might
Well,
get it, yeah.
Yes,
It is on Facebook, but the village could, it's had like 55 shares. And I just think it's more, not that I'm so worried about collecting money from the village people, but just that people know what's going on, and it in fact affects Chesterfield.
It's information, I don't see why it shouldn't. go on.
exactly.
Yeah, I have no complaint about
No.
that, sure, go ahead. and do what you
So I'll
need to do.
share it to
Maxine.
Maxine, or Maxine can go on my page and share it. If she'd like.
Yeah, because
Anyway, thank
we're
you for that, I
friends.
appreciate that.
Oh, goodness, yes.
Did you have church?
What other things are you doing for fundraising?
Well, tomorrow at the Lunenburg Market, because they sell at the Lunenburg Market, the Bridgewater Market, and the Chester Market. The coffee, the Laughing Well Brewery is going to donate all the funds from their coffee sales. And then the Syrian sell next to them, and they're gonna make an extra cake, so they're making, that's why they were video messaging me there, because they're making a poster and they're selling cake. And they're gonna have a donation bottle and stuff. And money's not even, I mean, and there's no food to buy. They just today got,
Well, yes,
some
it's
handle.
got to be.
It's
terrible,
unbelievable.
So where or how do you get this money to?
Reyes got the ways, because I was worried about that, but there's somebody and brother and.
They figured it out. So another suggestion for the Baptist church, the benevolent fund.
Okay.
They were in our kitchen for.
Yes, you were very
ages.
good. Okay,
So,
and Tish has something for me, she's been trying to reach me all day, so,
Just check.
yeah, she's, and that may not be that, but they were very
I know.
good neighbors. So it's quite horrible. Yeah, I'll
Whatever
just show
is
you a little-
necessary.
here, I'll
The
just
Could we-
whole
give
could we
situation
finish
over
that?
there is just
Yes.
terrifying.
you- move, sorry.
Did you have? something
are we
to say?
not blessed to be where we are?
Oh, yes.
So Carol, mine was only, I don't see anything there that says tourism. And I think that you at least are taxed with that as part of a mandate, I believe, is one of the things you can do. So I'm thinking that there must be ways, I can think of a number, to lure people, if you will, into the village. We understand that the majority of people like to walk and look. So my suggestion would be, we've already identified the houses that are 150 years old or older with
The red sign.
the red and white signs. But if you had a walking tour that was unique in that it doesn't say so-and-so's house built such and such a time, it would include maybe something you stuck in somebody's yard through the summer months when the tourists are around, or maybe people wouldn't mind having it on their house, but it says something like, what do you know? This was the original, like the town, whatever it's called now.
The roadblock?
No, the tavern.
The tavern, so the tavern could have a sign that says,
First tavern.
Yeah.
It was the first.
the earliest tavern in Nova Scotia supposedly. It was a grocery store,
A drugstore.
a drugstore, a clothing store, a bar, a pharmacy, a bicycle shop. whatever, but I mean, I think the funny thing on it might be that the grocery store had a horse, a black horse that was used for hauling groceries. And the minute that you got onto the wagon, the horse took off like a shot. And so. the
Little
grocery-
I
anecdote.
love those stories,
So,
yeah.
you know, if your stories included anecdotes rather than
Facts.
facts,
Blah,
of,
blah, blah.
you know, like the place next door, which was a quarantine house. And there was a
Across the street,
yeah, across the street.
that white
I'm
building.
waiting to see where this is going. Like,
Well, I'm thinking.
are you suggesting we set some money aside in
I'm
the budget
thinking
for
you set
something?
Some money aside for that. I'm suggesting that there's another I saw, I'll bring it down sometime, thing where they had a diorama that showed, this one was from Middleton, but it showed it was called The Other Side of the Tracks. So what it was a diorama showing the parts of town that you didn't see. So I mean, we have an ideal solution here whereby you've got the waterfront, then you would have a diorama of the stores where people could put the stores could be made to look like the ones that are here and identified, if you will, which would lead up to in this case, the station, because that would be your backdrop. So that people would have a chance to come in if they're at the station as a tourist. You can say, well, you should go downtown, this is what's here, and then offer it as a suggestion to the merchants that are here, that they might like to do a little bit of advertising to help people get down, and I think that's one thing. The other thing is you need some markers into the village.
Okay, so when you keep saying you mean we.
We, whatever, you.
But You're
Okay,
part of the
I'm
you
part of
now.
this.
You're part of it.
All right, thank you very much, Carol. Think about how much of the budget should be directed towards this initiative. All of us. I would suggest that the small amount that we as a village might be able to contribute, if combined with the mandate of the municipality for tourism, and in a collaborative effort for the village, might end up being perhaps a bigger bang for our buck.
Now, how about the downtown merchants?
And the merchants also include them, yeah.
I might have a grant for this whole thing.
And I guess, so I don't mean, if I sounded like I was pushing back or being negative, I didn't mean to. What I meant when I said I was waiting to see, like, I'm not clear if you're saying staff of the village should go out and develop a walking tour, or if you're saying we should come up with some grant money and say we're accepting applications for groups that might be interested in developing a
I
walking
would
tour,
say, I
or.
would say that Carol is just planting a seed.
I mean,
For
if I
us.
had the time and the energy, I'd do your walking tour. We had one that already goes from the
Whatever.
Legion over here to the farmer's market, the flowers. But I mean, I can see that one tagged as, this house was moved from Queen Street to here.
Yeah, Lunenburg, it's a huge thing, the walking tour.
Yeah, and there are a lot of people that walk and want information, but I don't like to see it, and I'm taking up time that I shouldn't. I don't think that you can sell people on just the fact that you've named the building. I think you have to have something,
Stories and
something different, a story that goes with it, that catches
A hook.
a hook that would catch their idea, come down and walk the village and hear our stories.
and you have stories and Jim has stories.
That's
So
right.
They're so
But
important
go
because
back
they,
a long
and
way.
they'll be gone,
Yeah.
right, if they're not.
Yeah,
Yeah, the stories are important to say.
well, I mean, we do that all the time, or the
Historical
Heritage Society
Society's
does
got a
that
bit.
all the time.
So.
Stories from like the
Yeah.
late 1800s and things like that.
So we don't have provision in the budget apart from the events, celebrations.
Which is 9,000.
Which is 9,500, yeah. Which is a small amount. and it's parceled out in small amounts. Does it create a big impact? Or maybe yes, maybe no. But certainly, when we give $250 or $500 to the yacht club or to the art center for race week or for a festival, their work creates a big impact for the village and for tourism. And that's certainly justifiable, but should we earmark a certain amount of money every year, or I don't know how we can do this without putting it in the budget. I would like to find out from Olivia at the municipality to see how interested they are in collaborating on tourism for the village. There's merchants meeting tomorrow here at 9 o'clock. I can ask the merchants if they are willing to put some money in the pot. Jeff, will you be attending that meeting tomorrow?
I can.
They couldn't find anyone to hire as their mobile tourism person last year, the entire season. So they probably, the more people that are working together, I reckon they'd be happier, right?
I would think so.
But I mean, you might convince the municipality to expand this so that you would have walking tours or tours of other areas. And a bulk of it would be the village itself. So if you're here in the village, these are the stories that we have in our village. You might also want to go to, for the municipality.
Right.
No,
Oh,
I think it's
yeah,
different,
right,
but it's not
right,
going to be that interested in partnering just with the village.
No, but I think they might be with the others, and you need to make, or we, as a group, not just the commission, but everybody needs to make Chester a destination in some way. And I mean, it isn't the shops, I'm sorry, because you can go very quickly through those
Yeah.
shops.
Trips are open.
Yeah. So I mean, what brings people here other than the beautiful singer?
Well, there's an actual grant that almost fits into what you're saying. It's for villages or municipalities to increase business tourism and so on. And why don't I bring a report back at the next meeting on that?
And the time is really right, because we're gonna find, we worry about finding ourselves irrelevant and obsolete with this whole change. So by taking
It's a new
on,
focus.
Carol's got a great idea.
But yes, there's, like, to your question, there's no reason why, as I read it. So one of the criteria on what grants could you give, if you chose to do it as a grant, is that it would need to be tourism related. So you could increase the amount of money, for example, in a grant pot, but make it specific to an activity, right? We're willing to give a grant to some nonprofit group that would work with us on
Blah, blah, blah.
a walking tour or increasing visibility of,
Yeah.
or
So
whatever.
we don't
right?
run afoul of the MGA, but still get to do what we want.
Yeah.
But that might get changed if they ever get around to acting on suggestions.
Okay, so we're gonna do some more exploration with partners, to see if there's any
Yeah.
partner interest.
Does anybody want me to follow up on those grants?
Absolutely.
Free money? Yes, please.
We all want.
I move to adjourn? Am I allowed, or that's you?
No,
you're
you're very welcome
She
to.
can't, I don't think, someone else has to. Yeah.
I move
Well,
to adjourn this.
Laura has adjourned the meeting. Thank you very
I
much,
think you
Laura.
only need a
It's not
second.
great.
She's
Well,
done
we
it.
All right, thank you.
I'm sorry.
My brain is exhausted.
No, that's fine. It's a new
But I only
avenue
have
that we
5
haven't really
months.
looked at before.